to the Community Standing Committee meeting. Today's the 11th of August, and just like to open the meeting. We've had the morning prayer and the recognition of our traditional owners. I don't believe we have any requests for leave of absence. Do we have any declarations of conflicts of interest? If not, we'll move on to item 5.1, which is the minutes of the previous meeting held on the 14th of July. And those minutes are on page 7. So I'll move that the minutes be received. Do we have a seconder? Thanks, Councillor Jones. Anyone have any issues with the contents? If not, we'll go to the vote. In favour? Carried unanimously. Thanks, everybody. Okay, the next one on the agenda is then item 6.1, and now I'd like to welcome Councillor Potter to present her monthly Community Arts, Heritage, Sport and Recreation Portfolio Report.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. First up with the libraries. So the 21st to 22nd of August 2021, the South Burnett Library celebrate Children's Book Week. This August brings the fun, excitement and of course the costumes of Children's Book Week. This annual event is a time for schools, libraries, authors, illustrators and children to embrace Australian children's literature. South Burnett Libraries will be celebrating this year's theme of Old Worlds, New Worlds, Other Worlds by hosting a Book Week themed scavenger hunt in each of the 6 branches from the 23rd to the 27th of August. Each library would love to see children and families pop in for a visit during this time in their Book Week costumes. During the week, there are also a number of schools and kindy visits scheduled at the Kingaroy and Nanango libraries, whilst outreach sessions at Moffatdale School, Warrulan School and St Joseph's School in Mergen have also been confirmed. The homeschooling group in Kingaroy will also visit the library for their annual Book Week celebrations, complete with a parade of their wonderful costumes. During Book Week, each library also invites attendees to regular rhyme time and story time sessions to dress up as their favourite character. Each year, now the Public Libraries Grant, so each year the State Library of Queensland administers an annual Public Library Grant to Queensland local governments to support the development of high quality library services to meet the diverse needs of the whole community. To receive these funds, Council must comply with the State Library of Queensland Service Level Agreement, which can be found at the State Library of Queensland's website. For the 2021 financial year, the Public Library Grant allocated to South Burnett Libraries totalled $168,169. To align with the South Burnett Libraries Collection Development Policy, these funds were used to purchase resources for the community that can be used for recreation, information and lifelong learning. As a summary, $79,643 was spent on printed library materials, which included books and magazines. Many of these items are delivered to the library shelf ready, whereby the items are catalogued and processed by the supplier for an agreed fee. For the 2021 financial year, $9,460 from the Public Library Grant was spent on this shelf-ready service for printed materials, with an additional $5,989 contributed by Council. For the 2020-2021, these funds facilitated the addition of 4,132 books and magazines to the collection. This equates to 79 new items hitting the shelves each week. $26,223 was spent on non-printed library materials, which included audiobooks and DVDs. Included in this total is the $2,878 spent on the shelf-ready service. For the 2021, these funds facilitated the addition of 1,301 new items. This equates to 25 new audiobooks and DVDs becoming available to libraries' patrons each week. $50,365 was spent on electronic and digital collections, which includes ebooks, e-audiobooks, e-magazines and online databases, Beamer Film and the Storybox Library. This also includes the $7,400 platform fee from Belinda Digital for hosting of the online resources. $11,938 allocated to the South Burnett Library signage project, which will be finalised mid-August. The use of the public library grant to purchase collections, signs and display items for branch was permitted by submitting successful library priorities project application with the State Library. To ensure the South Burnett Library's collection suits the interests of the people who live locally, our librarians regularly ordered titles that were requested for purchase by library patrons. In the 2020-2021 financial year, items requested for purchase by members of the public made up 18% of the funds spent on the collection in the Blackbutt, Kingaroy, Mergen, Nanango, Proston and Wando libraries. Annual statistical return. To confirm that Council are operating within the guidelines of the State Library of Queensland Service Level Agreement, Council submit an annual statistical return for each financial year, compiled by the Regional Librarian. Data reported on includes visitation figures, collection statistics, program attendance, library opening hours and library staffing levels. Previous South Burnett Library statistical returns are available at the State Library of Queensland's website. The first 5 ever Innovation Grant Acquittal. South Burnett Library's first 5 ever grant acquittal has been submitted to state libraries. The $5,080 obtained to enable library services to purchase vibrant outreach kits that align with the first 5 ever branding consists of 2 marquees, 5 colourful banners, 2 folding tables, 2 tablecloths and promotional flyers. These items can be set up at local community events to promote First 5 Forever and the services provided by the libraries at outreach sessions. This new equipment allows the library to be more visibly present in the community and attract family and carers to participate in all that can be offered through the First 5 Forever programs. South Burnett Libraries recently participated in the Farmers' Day Out held at Mergen Showgrounds on the 31st of July. Judy and Nikki from the library spent the afternoon promoting the services of the library whilst creating puppet crafts and reading stories. This was a fantastic event and it was very well, I must add here that it was very well attended and the library did get a lot of hits, probably because Nikki knew every person that nearly went past and she got them to come in and have a chat with the library staff. As more things in life move online, from social and leisure opportunities to accessing day-to-day services, it is increasingly important that community members feel confident and savvy in using computers. Kingaroy, Nanango and Wando libraries host weekly tech help sessions designed to assist those who wish to learn more about technology and the internet. Community members are encouraged to contact these branches for more information. And community members who are unsure how to download the Use Queensland Check-In app are invited to drop into their local library for assistance. Library staff are available to talk customers through the process of downloading and using the app. And for more information about this, please contact the Kingaroy Library on 41899 256. Right, arts. I'm pleased to announce the Council has been successful in obtaining $15,000 from Arts Queensland for the Regional Arts Development Fund. This will make a total of $32,764 for the 2021-22 RADF program. $11,288 of this money will be used for the co-investment partnership with Central Queensland University, which works with 4 other, that's actually 2 other councils for this one because it's only Bundaberg and Fraser Coast for this particular one. Normally, with regards to CQU RASN, it is the 5 councils, but for this one it's only with 2 others. And out of that funding, I might add here that there is, which leaves a total of $10,738 per round, and the rounds are open right now. The COVID recovery that was scheduled to be held in Kingaroy on the 27th to 29th of August has now been postponed due to the current lockdown, and I did have the new dates for that one too. They were given to me the other day. Sorry, but they're in November now, I believe. So if you go onto the CQ Rasen website, the the creative recovery is actually a very, very important course that I would suggest anybody can do. Now, what it does, it will, so anyone interested in helping the community when times are tough and using creativity to do this, is we really want you to apply to do this course, because what it does, it helps people within the community. If they go to, it was explained to me that if they go to a centre, they can, if they're in an evacuation centre, the coordinator who's had the training can actually take the kids aside and do something with the kids, or even do something with the parents that is creative along those lines to help get their mind off it, of everything they've been going through. Sport and Rec. The new round of the Fair Play vouchers has opened, and to help eligible families with the cost of signing up with local sporting clubs, the Fair Play vouchers are available up to $150 for club membership and team registration fees. Voucher applications close on September 29 and are redeemable at participating clubs until November 10. Parents, carers or guardians can apply for the Fair Play voucher if their child is aged between 5 and 17 years and they have a valid Centrelink healthcare card or pensioner concession card with the child's name on it. It has been, on another note, it's also been great watching the Taliqua Clancy represent Australia in the beach volleyball, the Tokyo Olympics. I know it's said at the time of this, but we're very proud to say that she did win silver. Wasn't gold, but silver, but it's the first silver medal in beach volleyball since 2000, if I remember rightly, which was Kerry Podhurst, I think, and her partner for the beach volleyball back then. So whatever the outcome is, our community is very proud of the former Kingroy State High School student achievements of becoming an Olympian. And I would like to move that my report be accepted. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Potter. That's excellent. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Froloff. Any questions? Councillor Duff?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've had people in the community suggest that perhaps on the back of Taliqua winning that silver medal, that we should probably celebrate or welcome her to give her the keys to the city or whatever, do something a bit special. So I just wanted to put that out there, that we should put our thinking caps on and think about how we can maybe recognise that publicly. Thank you.
Mr. C, have you had any experience in something of that order?
As an Olympian, no, sadly. But I've often thought about it, and I watch it quite admirably on television.
I didn't want to see you in a beach volleyball outfit.
No. I'm just making note, Mr. Mayor, and if we can come back to you with something that's that would be. Yeah, it was a wonderful achievement, and it was a great game. I thought that they did very well.
Yes, bring something back to the next meeting to consider. Yeah, happy with that. Yeah, okay. Anyone else? Comments or questions? I suppose I just did wrapping up. Just wanted to. We do a lot in council, and there's two areas that I think, at least, and there's probably more, but two areas that come to my mind that we excel in. That's frontline services, front counter, customer contact staff, and our library staff. Frontline services. And reading this report, it's amazing what they do. You know, helping people to get the COVID app on their phone, helping educating people on how to use technology with iPhones and things, offering the opportunity for community members to have an input into what library books we buy and to order books through our library. And that's just, and the list goes on. It's absolutely magnificent. They're an absolute highlight of our council. And I know we praise them, but gee, I think they earn it well and truly. So thanks very much, Councillor Potter, yeah, and to all the staff. They do a wonderful job, General Manager O'May. Okay, all right, so we've got that moved and seconded. We'll go to the vote. In favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Thank you, Councillor Potter. The next item, 6.2, is application for funding under the Black Summer Bushfire Recovery Grants Program. That's at page 27. And GMMA, is that yours? Would you like to lead us through that one? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, so just bringing this opportunity to council. So the Black Summer Bushfire Recovery Grants Program it's in response to the 1920 bushfires, and we were impacted by those, maybe not to a great extent to some of the other council areas, but there is a recovery grants program, and South Burnett is eligible. We're a tier 2 council or category B, whichever way it is. So there's 1.6 million which is eligible for our local government authority area. Some of the larger the areas that were greater impacted sort of have up to 4.5 million, I think, envelope in those local government authorities. But we're category 2. There's 3 streams that the program actually covers. So looking at social recovery, economic recovery, and then the third stream is recovery and resilience in the built environment. So that the third stream is really to do with infrastructure that was damaged through the bushfires. We, from a local government authority, we don't have sort of that. We didn't have infrastructure damage. So what we are looking at doing is putting a program together that we can actually put a social recovery and an economic development or economic recovery program together. So we're actually looking at, it runs for 2 years, so looking at putting 2 actual programs together. So a community development and an economic development program. So we'd be looking at basically funding those programs for 2 years, looking at, I suppose, putting in for the whole $1.6 million. It is local government authority wide, so if there is other people in the local government area that put in for it, then it is a competitive grant, so you'll get ranked. The issue is if we don't put in, if we only have $1 million within our local government, the other 600,000 would go to other areas, so we're making sure that we are fully subscribed in our local government authority area. So the team are putting together basically to get a team of community development officers, economic development officer. Probably a key component of ours is grant writers. We'd like to have a key component of this program is getting grant writers that would assist council but also assist our community groups. So we see that as a major step going forward if we can leverage and get further grant funding. So the programs from a community development space are just really trying to connect the community back together, create resilience through that connectedness to the community. So so that's where the recommendation is that we're putting to council development, submit an application under this funding to undertake a social recovery and resilience program and an economic recovery and resilience program.
Thanks very much, GM. And we have the recommendation as presented. Do we have a mover? Councillor Shoemaker, thank you. Seconder, Councillor Potter, thank you. Commentary, speakers? It's pretty self-explanatory, you think? Happy with that? Okay. We'll go to the vote then. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Thanks very much, General Manager. 6.3 is the Kingaroy Community Garden. It's at page 29, and now hand over to you, Councillor Potter. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With the Kingaroy Community Gardens, a while ago we handed them, we let the Clontarf boys go and do some work there. And they started painting them and everything like that, and they were actually doing a pretty good job looking after the gardens. We then told them that they couldn't do it, we were going to get rid of the gardens, which actually had nothing to do. That's what they told me they were told. But since then, a couple of the homeless people that have been living in the park have actually weeded the garden, mulched the garden, planted some veggies, whether it's lettuce and things like that. So especially in that one garden bed in the centre. So look, I really think, and it has been put to me that we should try and get this garden fixed up so the homeless people can use the garden, or any community members can use the garden. We've got a lot of different community groups out there. It doesn't need to be attached to one particular community group, but it'd be really nice if council could, whether this is something that we need to think about a bit further, but it'd be really nice if we could actually say to the community, okay, it's there for your use, please use it. There is an issue with water going to the garden because there's no electricity and it doesn't, there is a tap there, but it's got to be pumped through, but the pump doesn't work because there's no electricity to that shed that the beekeepers are using due to a runaway car, I think, at one stage. But it'd be really nice if we could do something with those gardens. They're sitting there. They have been an eyesore. Let's face it, they probably still are a bit of an eyesore, but it'd be really nice if we could get them back to community use, to community gardens.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. Any questions from councillors?
Mr. Mayor, if I may, so is the proposal or the request from today, did you want to go to an EOI and just see if there's any community groups interested out there, or contact? So what if we do just a progressive for today so that we can bring something substantive back? What if we just put out a bit of a call if there's interested groups, and then we can build a report around that and bring it back for consideration? Is that reasonable path forward, Mayor?
Sounds reasonable, yeah. And if we could also have a look, Mr. CEO, at the water, whether there's opportunity to put a solar pump or something in there so we can provide some water to them, would be great.
So,
if that's possible.
if the report is expression of interest, basically my shorthand, but expression of interest to community groups, and a report back on status of garden, status of site, yeah.
Thanks, Mr. CEO. Yeah, thanks. Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. There was a resident in Division 4 that I was talking to who was very interested in being a part of the garden group or committee and had been talking with me about it for some time. And I know I'd raised that with you, Councillor Potter, probably 6 to 8 months ago. I just wonder if in that expression of interest, we shouldn't just ask for local residents who might be interested in being a part of it as well, who might not currently be in a community group, but might be interested in coming and watering or being a part of the garden, and just see what comes forward. Yeah, I just don't want to restrict it to just groups, because I think there could be individuals in the area who would be keen to be part of it. And in terms of, it certainly is an eyesore, and I've walked around it with Councillor Potter, and there are areas of it where the timber is kind of rotting out, or the water is an issue. Like, I don't know if secondary to that, if we shouldn't do some sort of assessment on the garden beds themselves. Perhaps GMO May and his team could actually give us some recommendations as to what's needed there, if anything, because I'm certainly not a specialist in the area, but I could see just, my veggie patch is nothing too amazing, but I know the challenges with the soil and those sorts of things, and there might be a little bit more as to why that garden hasn't been successful in the past that we don't yet understand. So it'd be great to have one of the team have a look at all of those aspects and let us know what we really need to run a successful community garden from their perspective. I'd really appreciate that insight. Thank you.
Yeah. Councillor Potter.
There is a background story to that garden, actually, because it wasn't actually run by council. So the shed there that the beekeepers are using used to be the garden club, which was actually run by the NAB Bank as part of their community program. So, but now that's sort of disbanded. We have the beekeepers in that shed now who have cleaned it out beautifully, and they've done an amazing job in that and keeping it clean and everything. But it'd be really nice if we could do it. And I do have to agree with you. I am concerned about some of those garden beds because of those, the logs that we've used there, they are warping quite badly. So, if someone goes and looks at the garden bed, they might actually tell me that they're actually too far gone and there's not much we can do about it. So, but I think you're right, we do need that report. We do need someone to go and look at them and tell us if they're actually worthy of doing anything with. It might be that we pull out one and leave two, I don't know.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. CEO. Happy with that, councillors, including local residents, and report back on the status of the site to a future committee meeting. Happy with that? Yep. Okay. Very good. Yep. Excellent. Thanks very much, Councillor Potter. Okay. Would like to move that? Yeah. Oh, sorry. Recommendation. Sorry, Mr. CEO. Councillor Potter, you happy to move that? And Councillor Shoemaker, happy to second that. Speakers, those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Next item, I'm now happy to introduce Councillor Henson to present the Rural Services NRM Planning and Compliance Services Portfolio Report. That's at page 30. Thank you, Councillor Henson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Happy to present my Rural Services Natural Resource Management Planning and Compliance Services for the past month. In Rural Services Natural Resource Management, Harrisia cactus detection. This was brought up at our last meeting a month ago, which people had never seen or heard of before. Council's pest management contractors detected an outbreak of Harrisia cactus, professional name Harrisia martini, on an unformed section of road in Glendavon last month. Harrisia cactus is a restricted Category 3 weed, not previously known to be present in the Nanango area. This unpalatable succulent can form dense infestations that, if unmanaged, will reduce pastures to a level unsustainable for stock. NRM staff and contractors have commenced a surveillance and treatment program in the area, and an awareness campaign has commenced providing information to the community about the weed and how to identify it and how to report it. Approximately 80 plants have been found within a 5-hectare radius of the detection site, and landowners are encouraged to be on the lookout for this cacti species and report any suspected sightings to Council's NRM staff on 41899 For those that don't know, that area where that cactus is on the Nanango-Gameri Road, approximately 5 kilometres out, or roughly that distance out. Environmental assessments. NRM staff completed no environmental assessments for vegetation removal associated with road construction and approved 4 roadside burning and fence line clearing applications. In weed management, a total of 2 hectares of weed control was completed in July. Biosecurity officers inspected 52 properties for the presence of mother of millions, giant rat-tail grass and Harrisia cactus and other restricted weeds. Treatment of mother of millions treatment continued at Proston, Nanango, Kinleymore, Banarkin, North, Coolabunnya, Mount McEwen, Inverlaw, Debinga, Chelmsford and Stonelands. And splatter guns were loaned by landowners at Brooklands and Benin for lantana control, and spray trailers were loaned to assist with giant rat's tail grass programs at Glenrock. Wild dog and feral pig control. Councils provided landowners with 5 kilograms of wild dog baits in July that were distributed across an area of 2 hectares. Cat traps were loaned by landowners in the Wandai, Nanango and Tingura, and dog traps were used by landowners at Proston, and 1 kilogram of carrots containing calicivirus was distributed at South Nanango. Coolabunnya Saleyard staff conducted 1,468 cattle tick inspections and dipped 1,468 head. A total of 659 head were sold through the Coolabunnya Saleyards in July. And stock route grazing permits, no stock route adjustment applications were received and processed in July, and that's probably a sign of some of the magnificent winter weather we've received lately. Wandering livestock. Council received 10 requests to attend to wandering livestock across the region, and no cattle were impounded. In planning, a meeting with Council's planning consultants has been scheduled for next week to map out the timeline and progress to advance the major amendment to Council's planning scheme. This meeting had been delayed with recent staff changes and competing diary availability. Temporary provisions relating to economic support instruments were introduced in the Planning Regulation 2017 in September 2020 to support Queensland economic recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. These provisions were aimed at reducing red tape and simplifying planning approvals for certain low-risk users in zones where they would be expected by the community. Council adopted an economic support instrument which, in accordance with the temporary provisions, will expire on the 17th of September 2021, given the temporary provisions are not proposed to be extended. It is Council's intention to consider inclusion of a number of the economic support provisions into the major amendment of Council's planning scheme, which is currently being processed to be extended. It is Council's intention to consider inclusion of a number of economic support provisions into the major amendment of Council's planning scheme, which is currently being processed. Council has also provided feedback to the Department requesting an extension to the temporary provisions in the interim. And environmental health and compliance, COVID-19 restrictions of the South East Queensland councils have continued to impact on the South Burnett. Thankfully, however, the South Burnett has remained out of these lockdowns, but necessary for individuals and businesses to keep abreast of the changes, as there have been a number of people have been in the 11 affected local government areas before the lockdown and have had to isolate or follow strict interpersonal hygiene requirements. However, no specific lockdown restrictions needing to be implemented for the South Burnett at the time of finalising this report. And in compliance, the advertised compliance officer position has now closed and the applicant assessment, shortlisting and interviews will now occur. The temporary compliance officer contractor that has been replacing a long-term absence will continue until the 13th of August 2021. And with that, Mr Mayor, I'd like my Rural Services, Natural Resource Management and Planning and Compliance Services report be moved to be accepted.
Thank you, Councillor Henson. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Fryloff, thank you. Okay, speakers, questions? Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I would just, I ask this question every time, so I'm just going to ask it again through you, Mr Mayor, to the General Manager. Will all of the submissions received to date be included in the first planning scheme amendments to be sent to the Minister? So those you know, where we've gone out and met with different people and they've said, you know, can we do this or that? Will those different options for amending the planning scheme be put to the Minister? I just want to know what the process is with that. Thank you.
Yeah, through you, Mr Mayor. In short, they will be considered. It doesn't mean that they will actually be included in the amendment. So if we've got someone that has suggested that their block be rezoned to a particular zone and it doesn't make sense, then we may not support that. So yes, they'll be considered, but it doesn't mean that if someone suggests an amendment, it'll automatically be included. And that will be the same when we go through the formal process, is that people will put suggestions through to council. Council will consider, they'll adopt some of those suggestions and some they may, for whatever reason, may not include in the amendments. So it's a bit of a, can't say a blanket yes that everyone puts in a change that they want suggested, then it wouldn't necessarily be accepted by council. And there will be things that might be against the state interest. So the first stage of a planning scheme review is to check the state planning policy. So if we're making amendments that may impact on some of those state planning policies, the minister may reject those anyway. So that's the first stage, is actually making sure that any amendments aren't going to conflict with those state planning policies. So does that answer the questions? There will be an opportunity for those people that if we've got something in there, we can sort of liaise with them but yeah, generally, if it makes sense, we'd be including them. But just saying that sometimes there are suggestions that we wouldn't support on planning grounds.
Further to that, Councillor Duff, you comfortable with that?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm going to move a motion around that, if that's okay. But
You're to hold that until after this one. Thank you. Yeah, Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Henson, for your report. GMO May, I was very pleased to read the words around the economic instrument, you know, the provisions around reducing red tape, simplifying planning approvals for certain low-risk users in zones where they'd be expected by the community. It's great to see that you've taken action to actually extend those provisions whilst we're still undertaking that work on our major amendment. I just had a question in relation to that. So the report was that, and I understand the delays, but the report was that work would be done with the planning consultant to map out the timeline and the progress to advance our major amendment. I just wanted to understand from council's point of view, what sort of exposure will council have over the process? So will you prepare all the recommendations and then put them to council, or, you know, please excuse my, I haven't been through this process before, but I'd just really like to understand, because I know there's a lot of feedback about this, and I know in terms of our, particularly in regional development, that real focus on trying to work with our community to get to achieve growth outcomes is important. So yeah, I was just trying to understand what's the process that we can expect to be part of, and what are the touch points for council with the major amendment?
Yes, Thanks for the question, Councillor Shoemaker. Through you, Mr Mayor, yeah, be certainly a number of opportunities for input. So along the way, so even approving the amendments that go off, so council will actually see the proposed changes. When we have as Councillor Duff's talking about, when we get submissions, so there will be a process of formal submission making, so they will all come through council. Each of those will have a comment, and so from a officer point of view, we'll put commentary around that, around whether it's be supported on planning grounds or some background information, probably recommendations whether council accept or don't accept those proposed changes. I imagine with the planning scheme we will also do, so that's the formal part, so those things all have to go through council, so all of the decisions are made by council. So as part of it, I can imagine, and through the CEO, that there will probably be an opportunity to workshop at that stage, just so council can be comfortable with what is in the planning scheme amendments. So yeah, I imagine it'll be a combination of workshops, but yeah, as I said, everything will come back, all the decisions come back through council.
Supplementary question. Yeah, thank you. I certainly look forward to the opportunity to workshop that, because I understand that's a giant parcel of work, and this is our opportunity to really fix some of the things that perhaps haven't been working in the current planning scheme. So looking forward to that. So there'll be a series of workshops around the work that's progressed. Yes, look forward to that. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, General Manager. Okay, Councillor Duff.
Just one more question around that. Just what are the timelines of getting that to the minister?
Yeah, so we have been delayed, so we would have hoped to have been probably maybe 6 weeks further advanced, but next week we're meeting with our consultants to map out our timeline. So again, we're looking at probably a 6-month process from now to getting it adopted. So as I said, the first stage will be, we are continuing to compile that amendment package that if people are putting through, and what our planning team have picked up. So we'll go over that with our planners, make sure that that's coming along. But as I said, first stage is actually looking at if there's going to be impact on those state planning policies. So they'll review that. So we imagine within the next, say 2 months, that we'll get that formal kick-off. Once we advise the minister, we are somewhat in the hands of the department. So depending on responses back on if it takes 60 days or 90 days to get a response back. So some of those timelines are not under our control. I would envisage like the public consultation towards really, the November time frame, I suppose, is probably going to be the key for the community, getting that when we're out for public consultation. But we've really just got to get a document together that people can comment on, and that's so yeah, it's really that initially liaison with the department to start with. So yeah, again, I think six months time frame, and looking at really towards the end of the year for that public consultation phase.
Thank you, General Manager. Councillor Duff.
Just on another note, just as part of Councillor Henson's report, I just wanted to talk about the COVID-19 and the outbreak that happened in Brisbane, and I just wanted to compliment the Mayor actually for his forward thinking and jumping in and working with the police and working with emergency services to try and get some action happening. Because when that announcement was made, and we had the Wandai races, we had a lot of different functions around our region, and some of them were called off on that day. And the Mayor was very proactive in getting the police engaged and getting and it wasn't just on the day, but it's been moving forward, just getting everybody to comply, put masks on. He got the police. I know he talked to the police to get them to actually put right across our region to look at, and they did, to pull people up and make sure that they were doing the right thing as far as COVID goes. And I noticed that there has been some complacency because we haven't got it. But imagine if we did get that Delta outbreak, how bad that would be. So I just wanted to thank the Mayor for his being so proactive, and I think we all need to be proactive in wearing the masks, making sure everyone does the right thing, because we haven't seen it yet, but just imagine what it would be like if we actually got someone in our region with that, that actually had that Delta or, Delta strain. Yeah, so I just wanted to commend the Mayor on his being so proactive in that space. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Duff. I'm sure there are a lot of people that put a lot of work in. Other councillors and people across the region, staff have done a tremendous amount of work on this for some time. And also I'd like to acknowledge the work that the LDMG do, you know, Councillor Froloff and Councillor Potter's work, the GM Aaron, it's tremendous in keeping us safe through this pandemic thus far. And let's, fingers crossed, and let's pray that we stay safe until everyone's vaccinated. Okay, so any other speakers? If not, we'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Okay, the next item is 7.2.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor. I just
Sorry,
wanted-
Councillor Duff, I
sorry.
forgot. Thank you.
I wanted to move a motion on, I think it's relevant to this particular portfolio, and it's about magpies. So is that, am I in the right area?
Is that NRM?
NRM, I think NRM.
Manager
is
Watt?
magpies.
NRM, okay.
So we good with
Proceed.
that? So,
Happy to proceed, Mr CEO.
so
Yep.
I'd like to move that the South Bennett Regional Council allocate funding to engage an appropriately qualified and licensed person to relocate magpies identified within our region as aggressive and dangerous to residents. And if I may, Mr. Mayor, provide some background as to why I'm putting this forward.
Yeah, I think we'd appreciate that. Thanks, Councillor Duff.
Okay, so I have received complaints about aggressive attacks by magpies. And in Mergen, some residents cannot leave their homes, and elderly people have been taken to hospital with facial injuries. In Brisbane, only yesterday, a woman was attacked by a magpie, resulting in the death of her 5-month-old baby caused by the fall. I also know of aggressive magpies across Kingaroy that are stopping residents from walking. And I've done some research on magpie relocations. I actually rang the number we had on our council, that media release we put out last year. And I went through a whole process to finally find out that you could go to, that if you go through to the department, they say that there are licensed operators. So they said to find the closest licensed operator, which I Googled and found that licensed operator in Brisbane at the Queensland Fauna Consultancy. And I spoke to the gentleman, and he said that magpies live for around 15 to 20 years. So those same birds will be attacking for the next 15 to 20 years. He also said that if you remove them, they won't come back automatically. There's a fallacy that they'll be, and you don't just automatically get a cranky magpie back in that space. The cost of relocating is from $400 to $500 per bird normally, but it could be reduced if there was a number of relocations to be done in the same trip. The cost of travelling to our region would be from $250 to $300 both ways. And so I actually sent this through to General Manager O'May to see if we could progress this. So that's why I'm putting it to the council, because I think it's a serious issue. I think it detracts significantly from our rail trail and from generally people coming into our region. So I just wanted to put that to the council. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. Do we have anyone a seconder for that? Oh, thank you, Councillor Potter. Okay, speakers for or against? Councillor Duff, you had a chance to speak. So anyone else want to raise any issues? Councillor Shoemaker?
By all means, I understand the concern. I've got one in my neighbourhood who's very aggressive, and I do think it would be wonderful to have a process or system around relocating aggressive magpies. Definitely, I could see how that could be a good thing for residents in our region. I'm just very mindful from the 38 odd budget workshops and discussions that we had of how finite our budgets really are. and I'm probably just not keen to allocate funding until I really understand, where that would come from, or how we would pay for that within our current budget provisions, and what the process might be. So I wouldn't want to set our staff up implementing a system without having a resource and some process behind it. So, I think it's a wonderful idea, and I think there just needs to be more work done so that, if anybody in our region had an aggressive magpie, we were all clear in terms of the funding that we've allocated, how much funding, and certainly I appreciate that it would be better to do just one campaign where we pick them all up than try to, have people come out on a number of occasions. But yeah, I'm very, very mindful of our fine out budget, and I'm also very mindful of our fine out resources, and I'd probably just like this to come back before allocating just an open-ended funding, which I'm not supportive of doing that for any aspect of council. I think as a council we really need to understand our budget and what things are costing and where that's coming from. So I'm in agreement with the idea, and I probably want more information before I could allocate funding. That's too open-ended for me at this point in time. So Councillor Duff, if you were willing to consider an amendment where that might be something council investigate and then come back to council with a proposal, I would be much more supportive, not just sort of writing blank cheques. I'm not supportive of that ever in this chamber. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Potter.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I totally agree with Councillor Shoemaker on this one. While I do agree with the idea behind this, there's a lot of different aspects and legalities behind this, because if the tree's in a private yard, is it one that we still go and get? Or if a tree's on, commercial land, do we still go and get it? Because, so I just think there's so many legalities behind this particular one that it's really got to be looked into very, very closely before we go there.
Other councillors? Councillor Henson?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, look, and this has probably been brought to everyone's attention because of the absolute tragedy with that little 5-month-old girl in Brisbane. Magpies they can be territorial, but they are seasonal as well. They are a protected species. It's a very curly one. It's a very, very curly one, and I can certainly understand where Councillor Duff is coming from. And I think we've lived with magpies and their habits for a long, long time, and I can support Councillor Shoemaker and Councillor Potter's take on that motion, and on the same, I think there needs to be some more work done in that. This could, and with our finances in our budget restraints and what we're trying to achieve, I'd like to reiterate that the public be seriously careful and diligent in where they go and in this time of year, just what magpies are where. And as Councillor Shoemaker alluded to, she has one in her area. I think nearly everybody across Old South Burnett would have one in their area. And there's ways and means about avoiding them and trying to deal with them. And I can certainly, and I reiterate my condolences to the people with that little baby. So,
Other speakers? Other councillors? No? Okay, yeah, I've listened to what everyone said. Certainly appreciate the concern there, Councillor Duff. We certainly don't want to write a blank cheque on this, but I'm also aware that they are seasonal, as Councillor Henson said, and I think they're starting to perhaps get involved in their nesting and swooping right now. So we're probably coming into the swooping season, if I could call it that. And pardon the pun, but this comes from sitting so close to Mr. CEO. I'm wondering whether it's worth us considering doing one swoop of the entire region to pick up those that are emerging as dangerous magpies or recurring dangerous magpies that are coming back every year, setting a set amount of money and saying, well, once that money's spent, that's it, rather than putting an open-ended checkbook. I'm happy to have a report come back, but I'm just worried that we don't want to let this go on too long, otherwise we'll get out the other side of the season if we let it run through for too many months. So whether we have a report come back to the ordinary meeting or whether we just say and we have a consideration, Mr. CEO, at that time?
Mayor, if this is up, it's going to have to come back to the ordinary anyway, so Peter. I think we can put rather than just doing the brief report, we can put a bit of body around it, and so we can give costings, and if there's irrationally, should we be able to get them? But yeah, it'll have to come back to the ordinary meeting if it's carried.
If this is carried, then we bring it back to the ordinary meeting with some costings to do perhaps one swoop, one run through for further consideration. Because like the other councils, I'd like a bit more detail on this one. Councillor Shoemaker, anything further?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I was just reading Magpie season runs from July to December. And so the peak period, Councillor Hitchin probably already knows this because he's full of useful information, is September. So yes, I guess, there has to be a process around how we report them, identify them, all of those things. So I think and I'm mindful of how tight our current resources are with changes in the community's team. So yeah, I'm fully supportive, but I do think that we need to think this one through. To be effective, we need to think this one through, and we need to have a shared understanding that, we may not be able to tackle 100% of the problem, but certainly it sounds like we could make a bit of a start on it. So yeah, supportive. I'd just like to see more information.
That being the case, GM, would it be possible to bring a report back to the ordinary meeting at the end of August? So if we did decide to do something, we could be prepared for September. Would that be sufficient time, do you think?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Yeah, no, I think we can certainly put some information around, I'll gather some statistics around number of complaints. Probably the issue with magpies, as Councillor Henson has said, we've lived with them for years, so I'm sure we probably don't get reported all of the ones that are out there. But yeah, we can certainly put some information together, do some research on where there are other councils. Like obviously, as council aware, we don't have a relocation program at the moment. I don't think many councils are, but yeah, we can look at if there are some of those criteria around there, as Councillor Potter talked about, if they're in a private property. And people do now access for a commercial, it's a fee for service, so people do access that themselves. So yeah, we can sort of put a couple of guidelines around and come back to this general meeting.
Maybe some recommendations as to limit on the funding so we could ensure that was capped. We know what we're dealing with. Councillor Duff, that being the case, would you be happy for a report to come to the ordinary meeting in 2 weeks' time with an officer's recommendation?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, absolutely. If we just want to amend that, the report come back to the general meeting. I just wanted to say that from talking it through and knowing from historically that the signs always go up in the same places. So those magpies are pretty much territorial. So I don't think it will be that hard to identify those specific magpies that have caused grief over the years.
So, Councillor Duff, Nell's just changed that recommendation there. Are you happy there? It's now about bringing a report back to the August general meeting as presented?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Councillor Potter, are you happy with that as the seconder? Okay. Any further speakers? If not, we'll go to the vote. In favour? Against? All in favour? Carried unanimously? Okay. Thank you. Okay. Now, 7.3. Are we up to 7? We're at 7.2, Linnell. Sorry, I lost my way there a bit. Okay. So 7.2, the Nrm Operational Update, and welcome back, Manager Watt. I think is that you underneath that mask? Yes, it is. Welcome back, Mark, from your lockdown, Ipswich. Good to have you back on board. Okay, so Mark, we might get you to run us through the report if you can. It'll be much appreciated. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. So I guess councillors would have had an opportunity to review the report. So obviously elements of the report have been included in the portfolio report. So Honey Locust continues engaging contractors and survey and mapping along Baramba Creek and Stewart River in partnership with Cherbourg Aboriginal Council and the Webrock. African boxthorn survey education awareness with contractors to assist mapping, and same sort of process there, October through to now. Feral animal control groups deliver information sessions to showcase successful control group models and assistance available under that program. So that's progressing. So in relation to the stats for Coolabunnya sale yards, you can see those numbers are comparative there to the same time last year and year-to-date accumulative. So fairly low numbers, obviously, going through the sale yards at the moment. Nanango dip yard is inactive at the moment, fairly quiet. Wandering livestock is fairly consistent with the numbers from last year. The wild dog program, we've got the baiting program coming up for that, and those dates are for September. I've got the dates here. Yeah, so that's commencing on Friday the 13th of September through to Friday the 20th of September. So we're looking at promoting that as best we can within the region, trying to get a good take-up of the baiting program. We are looking at trying to probably review the way we do a lot of the advertising and notification for those baiting programs. We do spend a lot of money on colour brochure flyers that we put into a lot of letterboxes, which may be deemed to be excessive and cost ineffective. So we're trying to perhaps rationalise and improve the way we do that, because it probably ends up into a lot of letterboxes that we don't really, they don't belong in those letterboxes, and people tend to throw them out with other junk mail perhaps. So we're just having a look at that. We're doing no major changes there, but for the moment this particular round, those flyers are being circulated. So we could save quite a bit of money in that space. So rabbit control, similar results so far. Carrots being injected with Calicia virus, and equipment loaned. We've done some trailer loans, splatter guns, cat traps, etc. So they're all reported in the usual way. Stock root grazing, fairly low numbers there. Environmental assessments, as reported in the portfolio report, no numbers, very low numbers there. And we've had some interaction with some particular landowners about giant rat tail grass and some extra poison being handed out there under our program there. So we've obliged those particular residents for that. And customer requests, the numbers, I guess, are somewhat similar to the same time last year. On the bottom of that page, 35, I think it is. So, yeah, they're all being dealt with in a timely basis. So I'm happy to take questions, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Manager. Any questions? Questions from the floor? No? Councillor Duff.
I just wanted to do a compliment. I just wanted to say how great the customer request process is working in the Nrm Parks and Gardens. I just think it's awesome. I just think it's just a credit to the team who have changed the process, and I know that General Manager Jarvis was part of that, getting all that customer service stuff happening, and I'm just really, really pleased with the response that the community is getting for any customer requests through that department. Thank you.
So we have the report received for information. Do we have a mover? Councillor Potter, thank you. Second, thank you, Councillor Schumacher. Go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Now 7.3, Planning and Land Management Operational Update at page 36. And GMMA, over to you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we've got the operational stats for the Planning Land Management Department. So you'll see now we've been collecting stats for or formatted in this format for a couple of years now. So we're into a new financial year, the 21-22 year. Again, looking back at last year, you can see most of the figures were about twice what they were the previous year, and there's been no slowdown in this year. Probably increased, if anything, in the month of July, right across. So if you're looking at customer requests in the planning, building, plumbing, across all three departments have been increased. And yeah, same with the applications. No real let off, which is which is pleasing to see that they are. But the team is certainly stretched at the moment. But yeah, the stats are there, and just continuing strong demand.
So in summary, GM, very strong demand for planning services with the construction industry is still very busy.
Yeah, and I think if there wasn't delays on materials, is probably one thing holding back the industry at the moment is actually getting materials and getting tradesmen, and which is pushing up prices, unfortunately. But yeah, very very strong demand right across the board.
Thank you, GM. We have the recommendation that be received for information. Do we have a mover? Councillor Froeloff, seconded Councillor Shoemaker. Thank you. Any further questions? If not, in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 7.4, voucher for residents' green waste, page 41. Benin Patch, GMMA.
Yeah, I can kick this off while
Kick
when
this
the
off.
patch comes up. So yeah,
Thanks,
so
Peter.
this is essentially in response to a request that we had regarding the collection of commercial operators collecting green waste from pensioners and depositing it at the landfill and getting charged waste collection fees. So we weren't sure at the time of writing of the report whether it was just specifically related to green waste or general waste. So as detailed in the report, council doesn't charge for the disposal of green waste at the landfill site. So if a private resident or a contractor is taking green waste to the landfill site, then there's no charge for that. So even if it is a commercial contractor, if a commercial contractor takes green waste and general waste as a mixed load, then they will be charged the commercial disposal fees because of the separation. So if it's purely green waste, then that isn't charged. And I think, if operators are charging that to customers, then that's not a council charge. So obviously the person is getting charged for the service of taking to the tip, but there's no commercial fees for disposal of green waste. There is in the for general waste, and I think it was, and I might let Manager Patch talk about the disposal of general waste, because the state government actually does charge the waste levy on that disposal of general waste, even if it is under the NDIS scheme. So I might just hand over to Craig to talk about that part.
Thank you, General Manager O'May. Through you, Mr Mayor. So as Peter's outlined earlier, green waste, no charges on that, whether it's domestic or commercial, but definitely with the general waste, so pretty much we're talking about anything other than green waste coming from your domestic residence. If you as an individual self-haul it to the landfill, there's no charge. If you engage a commercial contractor to take it for you on your behalf, and that could be a cupboard, it could be putrescible solid waste, it attracts a commercial disposal charge and also the commercial levy. We have clarified this a number of times with the state. As far as they are concerned, as soon as a commercial entity is engaged, takes it from residential to the landfill, it is still generated by a domestic householder, but as soon as you engage a commercial operator in that process, it's commercial waste and the full fees as far as the state are concerned apply. Now, I don't believe that this was necessarily the primary focus of the TATDA. It was about the green waste, which we were a bit concerned if a contractor is holding themselves out there saying, oh, this is the council disposal fee, when there is no disposal fee. But she also did say that it could also apply to general waste. So that's the current status. We also spoke to the state about NDIS, because they're potentially some of the most vulnerable in the community. And as far as the state are concerned, as soon as you engage a commercial operator to take it from a residential property to the landfill, doesn't matter whether they're on death's bed or not, it's still deemed commercial waste, unfortunately. So moving forward, the response or the submission put in by NATDA was about vouchers. So if council did really wanted to consider doing something in this space, so council already has totally removed any disposal on green waste. If you wanting to do something in the space for the particular select group in our community, e.g., elderly people who don't have any friends or family and physically can't take stuff to the landfill themselves, then I probably wouldn't suggest that you look at doing a voucher en masse to everybody, because then you're not targeting in on those people that you're actually wanting to help. You're just throwing them out there. And even though it's free for everybody else, there might be some entrepreneur out there who might go around and collect the vouchers and then utilise them within their own business. So their waste then becomes free waste. If that was the case, you could either waive the fees totally, in which case council's going to have to wear the state waste levy, which you probably wouldn't be encouraging council to do that, because I can't tell you quantitatively how many of those types of people currently utilise a commercial operator but dispose of at the landfill. So you mentioned before about not signing a blank cheque. That would be signing potentially a blank cheque. You could waive the council disposal charges for those people, but allow the state waste levy fees still to apply. So you're like subsidising or waiving a portion of those charges over which you have control. Or alternatively, and I'll probably be recommending more of an approval process, in that if elderly Mrs. Smith physically can't, doesn't have the wherewithal to get her stuff from her property to the landfill and must engage a commercial operator, or a single parent who doesn't have a trailer, only has a sedan, difficult financial circumstances, then we could have an application process that they apply to council for, on compassionate grounds, that council could consider their application and issue an approval or a voucher specifically to them for their specific circumstance. And so then they can pass that on to any contractor that they engage, and that can be presented at the Weybridge Gatehouse when they go through.
Thank you, Craig. Is there any appetite amongst councillors to have a report what RAC to perhaps look to change the system, or are we comfortable with where we're at this time? Councillor Potter?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, at the moment, I'm comfortable where we're at. I mean, I just actually see this being something that could be, as you said, some person who decides to go and get everyone's letter out the letterbox from council and takes all the vouchers. But look, I do feel for these people, but there could be a better way. And if we did do something like this, we would have to limit the amount of vouchers per of that household. So it would have to, as Manager Patch said, they would have to come to council, they would have to apply, and we would have to limit the amount per year to maybe two dump trips a year or something like that, because we can't just make it open-ended, because I fear that that's when we're going to run into a lot of trouble and a lot of expense at our part.
Councillor Schumacher.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just had a question just in relation to, and if I had the fees and charges here, I'd have a look, but just to give us a bit of an idea, like in terms of what a commercial operator might be charged to dump some domestic-like waste, like what?
Yep.
How is that measured and actually charged?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, to answer your question, Councillor Schumacher, if commercial waste comes out to the Kingaroy facility where there is a weighbridge, it is goes over the weighbridge and it's charged by per tonne, which is $1.98 per tonne.
$1.98?
No, $198 a tonne.
A tonne.
So that includes the state waste levy component.
Okay.
The way they've set it up, we can't charge and show it self-itemised on the receipt that this is your disposal fee, and this is your state waste levy fee. We just have to say it's one fee, so we don't misrepresent the state.
Oh,
and so that's $1.98 a tonne. If you go to any of the other three major facilities where there isn't a weighbridge, unfortunately, it gets charged out at $1.98 a cubic metre. So we have told our operators to be conservative in the estimation of those cubic metres, so people are not being unnecessarily taken advantage of. But it's either a tonne or a cubic metre, and it's $198 a tonne or a cubic metre. So it is a substantial amount of money, and that's why the state have introduced the waste levy, because they are trying to provide a financial incentive or instrument to provide pressure that it's not going to go to landfill. It can either be recycled, reused, or eliminated altogether. But there are occasions when that can't happen. So if it was residential waste, irrespective of whether it was a cupboard, putrescible waste, or anything other than green waste coming from, say someone's doing a job, say they get a builder to do a reno in the kitchen.
Yeah.
If they have their own trailer, throw the stuff in there and take it to the landfill themselves, it's free. If the builder gets rid of it for them, then it attracts charges. Yeah.
And out of that $198, a component of that we pay to the state for the state waste levy.
Correct. Which
Yes.
is $90, $90
So
a tonne.
significant proportion of
Almost
that
half.
commercial
Yeah.
charge. Yep, before we even manage the waste. Yeah.
Correct.
It's an interesting. I really like the idea and the concept, and note that 40% of our population is vulnerable or elderly people. But I also see the other side of it in terms of the cost of waste management, and those costs are only going to increase. And I can see the state's position in trying to encourage people to recycle or repurpose or find other ways other than landfill for significant commercial waste. Yeah, it's interesting. I'd probably be supportive of some more information. I don't think I can make a decision on this, and I think maybe it's a specific program, or I'm mindful how many hardship cases might come forward, and I'm mindful of the challenges with our budget already. So yeah, I'm not in a position to make any sort of decision about this at this point in time, but certainly recognise it might be something we need to consider a program, or I know we had talked about even having some sort of pickup or something in the past where people would put items out, but that became problematic. I understand elderly people or alike, who are struggling to dispose of particularly large items, could put them out on their footpaths, and council used to do a pickup. This was way before my time, because I don't remember ever as a ratepayer or a resident having this service, but that you could put those items out. So yeah, but I understand that got quite problematic in the end as well, because you can end up with more than what we can actually pick up.
No? Yep. That's correct. So council, when I say council, Kingaroy Shire Council many, many years ago, did actually have a bulk waste collection contract, and other local authorities from time to time have done that as well. However, for those people that, once again, you're trying to target to help, which might be the vulnerable, aged pensioner, no family, no friends who can assist, people who could otherwise have other options available to them, they're people who may abuse the process. So, the budget might have been $50,000 to go throughout the whole shire, but what we found is you didn't even get out of one township, because everybody was putting stuff out on the footpath. And so you tie up a truck with a crane lift on it and two guys for weeks, go around picking the stuff up. Plus also it does become quite messy looking, and potentially very messy, depending on what it is. If it rains, if animals get into stuff, or people come drive by and knock stuff off too. Not that that's necessarily a problem, at least they're reusing it. But some people get quite shirty that they've stolen my gear. Well, no, you've put it out there on the footpath for it to go away. Does it really matter how it goes away? But some of them. So local authorities, talking to our compatriots elsewhere, have gone away from the bulk waste curbside collection, because it is such an unknown quantity, and you are sort of signing a blank cheque in that regard. If you are making a commitment that we will go throughout the shire and do these towns, then you don't know how many people are going to take you up on that. And if you get more than what you've budgeted for, well, then your costs just blow out, unfortunately.
Thank you,
Once again, if
Manager.
you're trying to target vulnerable people in the community, there are the SB Aged Care that does have funding to assist in that particular space. But if there are other people that specifically are identified that they fall outside the NDIS or fall outside SB Care, then that's something that you could potentially look at trying to tailor a more focused, niche response rather than just en masse.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for the report clarifying. It's good to understand that, you know, commercial domestic green waste is not charged on regardless of who takes it to the tip. So that's very good to know. And I think it would be great if we communicate that back to NATDA appropriately through our channels.
Okay, thanks everyone. I might move now that we received the report for information. Do we have a seconder? Thanks, Councillor Jones. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Okay, it's back to Councillor Froloff to present the Waste Management Portfolio Report. Thank you, Councillor Froloff.
Thank you, Mayor. And that Waste Compliance Officer position. The Waste Compliance Officer continues to be active in monitoring and investigating illegal littering and dumping matters. The fixed-term state-funded position is enabling a significant response to these illegal activities that Waste Services previously did not have the resources to adequately respond to. And the Cloyna Waste Facility fires. There have now been 4 fires within the last 30 days at the Cloyna Waste Facility. These 3 fires have been in the skip bins and the other fire involved the green waste sign. It is not confirmed if these were deliberately lit. However, issues with fires have not been something commonly experienced at the Cloyna tip or any other waste facility for that matter. These fires have interestingly started after increased surveillance and enforcement of this waste facility. All 3 fires in the skip bins have been reported to the police, and as council believes these are to relate to suspicious circumstances. Detailed costs to repair the fire damage has not yet been finalised, and photos are as followed. And the Capital Works update. So far as the Manuel Transfer Station is still on track. And I'd like to take this time to thank Manager Craig Patch. He's leaving my area to head to greener pastures over to GM Jarvis's area. I just want to take this time to personally thank you, Craig. You've been great as the manager of waste and compliance, and I'm glad you're not leaving. You're just going across the road, but thank you for everything. I'd like my report to be accepted. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Froloff. Do we have a seconder? Yep, Councillor Hanshin, thank you. Any questions in relation to the report? No? Good to see that things are progressing there. Only question I had was, Manager, do we have any cameras at that Cloyna facility? I imagine we don't have.
We don't have any fixed cameras. We have put up a couple of more discreet hunting cameras. However, they've been knocked off, so we're trying again. And it's just interestingly, because we've actually, the officer that we've had for the fixed appointment through the state funding, they've been very active in this space and have been contacting a number of people who've been identified as doing the wrong thing at the facility. And it's only since that we've had to talk to some individuals that these fires have happened. So the green waste pile hasn't been lit up, just the sign that tells you you can't put things here and you can't put things there. So you put 2 and 2 together, and I think it's one of our disgruntled residents who've been caught.
Right, and in terms of the illegal dumping, people dropping rubbish on the side of the road and so forth, will we be able to get some signage at some stage around the fines and penalties that apply and have that put, once we know where all those key locations are, ultimately we can get some signage in those locations to make people aware of the level of fines and penalties that apply?
Yes, that's certainly the plan with this particular position and funding from the state. They've got approval, or we've got approval from the state to get some signs together. We're actually in an initiative with the Cloyna State School. We have done some education with the kids there. They've done up some posters, which the state have then turned into signs, and we'll be installing that to hopefully try and get more of a community feel, understanding that this is a community facility. And if we as a community can look after Cloyna rather than lighting fires, putting things in the wrong place, that we might get a better outcome. So hopefully that's the theory. We will see if that turns out to be practice. But in regards to some of our other hotspots, that is the plan for signage to be going up there. Not just saying that you're under camera surveillance, but also to be advising people what the fines are and reminding people that this is a wrong action, not acceptable.
Thank you, Manager. Okay, we'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you, Councillor Frodoff. Next item is the Environment and Waste Services update at page 52, and you've got the floor, Manager Pat, so if you could please keep going, that'd be appreciated.
So these are our statistics for the last month, and also we have the yearly to date comparatives, which being July is exactly the same. But that just gives an understanding of the number of services that are being provided as far as waste goes, and also the number of customer requests we're getting in compliance. In relation to our statistics for waste, if you just keep scrolling up for me, Linnell, please. Yeah, so we actually have some good news in relation to the prepayment from the state. So as I mentioned earlier, so domestic waste is effectively free, but that's only because the state are making an annual prepayment amount, which accounts for our last financial year domestic disposal. So based on last year and what's actually come through, you can see our threshold line up the top and our cumulative line that has gone up. At the end of this financial year, we actually have made a saving as far as what has been received from the state and also where we've come in. So that makes up, we had an overshoot last year. This under not only nets us out, but we have a net positive effect. So that's actually good news for waste services, which effectively means council hasn't had to put their hand in their own pocket to pay for any of the domestic waste levy disposal. Correct.
It's a good outcome. Thank you, Manager. Any questions on that, Councillor Potter? No.
Actually, Mr Mayor, I'm just looking, sorry, do you mind if I sit down? Because I'm just looking at the report on my computer here. So there's just a couple of things on the report I was just curious about. One was the new animal registration numbers, and one is the infringements of animals.
Yep.
And you've got the date at the top from the 1st to 7th, 2021. Is that meant to be the 1st to 7th, 2020?
Yes, it is, Councillor.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, hang on, sorry. So in the first month, so the month for July, this 2021, and then monthly comparatives 2020. So no, that is meant to be like that. So
we've had 149 animal registrations this month?
Yeah, correct, because we've actually been out doing the house to house.
And we've got 215 animal infringements so far.
Correct. So because we've had a resource active in that space, not only do we flush out a whole heap of new dog regos, but those people who have either been registered but haven't registered currently and or have been found new, we give them 7 days to register. If they don't register it after that fact, then we send them a fine. So the fines of 215 don't automatically match the number of new dog regos. They're two totally separate figures. But the high increase on that is because we've had a resource out there chasing and advertising the fact. So it gets around when the guys door knocking in Kingaroy, we seem to get more dogs registered.
And I see the customer preference for the
to this time compared to last year, yes. Yeah, so that, and animal management, that could be anything from dog regos to excess dogs to wandering dogs to dog attack. Oh, no, not dog attacks, they're separate. Yep. So it's a whole range of anything to do with animal management.
Thanks again, Manager. Councillor Duff.
Through you, Mr Mayor, just I would like to know the status of the proposed policy to address unsafe and unhealthy dwellings in our community. And I noticed that in this list here of customer requests, I'm just not sure where that fits, because the bulk of my requests now are for buildings that are non-compliant, or there's like a caravan in a yard and someone's dwelling in it. Is that in the planning section requests? So, but my question basically is, what is the status of the proposed policy to address unsafe and unhealthy dwellings in our community?
Yeah, through you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, that was my first initial. I think that they're ending up in the planning, the previous numbers in the planning building customer requests, CRM, so not showing up here. And that policy, I know Craig and the team have been still just putting together that, trying to find other councils, where we can put a policy together to give us some framework to start to address those issues. Again, we are sort of struggling with trying to get a process together that isn't just coming down with the iron fist, and so just trying to to have a balanced approach, but also looking at how we can actually resource doing anything in that space is probably the other issue. So we can have a policy, but we have no ability to implement anything at the moment, sort of under the current resourcing. So we are still a work in progress, but hopefully not too far away. And I think as Councillor Froloff mentioned that Patchy is leaving, I think this is one of the key things still on his to-do list before he heads over to finance.
I won't actually get that finished before I leave, Councillor. However, we do have a draft. We are still awaiting some clarification on a couple of legal technicalities to give us an indication of whether we go, because a number of those issues go across a number of our council departments. It can be planning, it can be building, it can be plumbing, and then it can also be local laws. So we're trying to find out from the solicitors, lawyers, what is the best approach? Is it best to start at the top of the tree from a planning point of view? Because if you're illegally occupying that land, do we go underneath the Planning Act or the planning scheme? If there is a structure on there, like a shed or a lean-to or something like that, that hasn't got building approval, then Building Act becomes involved. And if you're illegally occupying a structure for a use that it wasn't intended, like if you build a shed, it's a shed. You don't actually have approval from building to actually occupy the shed. So that's a building aspect. And then if you've got, similar to that lady who was in here, in community engagement meeting, if they've got illegal plumbing work on site, so they haven't gone through the appropriate plumbing process, then that's illegal, and the Plumbing Act would apply in that instance as well. Then if you've got people who are occupying a property and they've got a whole heap of dead cars, buses, wigwams, other structures that may not need building approval, but from a visual amenity point of view, makes the area look bad, then that would be an application of the local law. So do you start at the bottom of the tree or do you start at the top of the tree? My opinion is you would start at the top, because if you can't be occupying there from a planning perspective, then it makes all these other problems disappear.
Through Mr. Mayor, in our corporate plan, we actually put it that we only wanted to address those that were unsafe or unhealthy, rather than going, like you're saying, it's not about a big stick across the whole non-compliant buildings. It's about those ones that are really extreme, that are causing unhealthy situations in their own environment, or unsafe situations in their own environment. So I think that was why we put that through the corporate plan. That was the mood of council, and it was to develop a policy around that.
Correct.
Yep.
And so that policy that will come back will include that, and probably even bigger, at least for council's discussion. So if you only just want to look at that particular aspect of unsafe facilities, and I suppose the definition of unsafe is probably something that needs to be debated as well, but that policy will come back to council for council's deliberation, consideration, discussion, before we ever go and implement it en masse.
Yeah, thank you, Manager. Anything further, Councillor Duff?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just the one, and that's again, the other one was the visual amenity, and trying to get a local law or a policy around what is acceptable and what's not acceptable. So they were the two. So I just wonder if I could perhaps propose a workshop on both of those within a timeline, because this has been, like, I can't manage the number of requests I'm getting at the moment.
Yes, I do understand that, Councillor. One of my I do believe I will be able to have a policy back to council for the overgrown allotments. That's one of the things on my to-do list as well. I believe I'll be able to have a draft to council before I disappear. That will provide a guideline, and I understand that you wanted a stricter standard in towns rather than outside of town, so we have tightened that up. We'll also have a procedure which will show some photographic examples of this would not comply, this will comply. And so you as the councillors can say, well, look, you're happy with that. No, we're not happy with that standard. Because before it was knee high, we're suggesting that it will come down to 30 centimetres instead of knee high, which is, depending on how tall you are, it can be anywhere from 600 to 500 mil. So in town, instead of it being that higher amount, it will be coming down to 300, but that's obviously going to be for council's consideration and discussion.
Okay, you comfortable with that, Councillor Duff?
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor. It was also about the number of car bodies. It wasn't just about the overgrown. It was a whole visual amenity policy. It was a visual amenity policy because in the past you've always said that you can't declare what's right or wrong because it could be, is 3 cars too many or 2, and you had suggested that we have a policy. So I've been trying to get a policy on the table so we do have some clarity around what we think is not acceptable.
Yeah, through Mr. Mayor. Yeah, so we can certainly do a workshop and look at a policy on that place. I know that you were originally talking about a local law review and implementing in our local law, and that was activity was identified for the 22-23 financial year. So this year we're actually, the idea was to get a costing together, and we're looking at probably I think that was for the first quarter budget review on what the local law review will cost. So the actual amendment of the local law was put into next year's operational plan or flagged for next year's operational plan. But in the interim, we could actually, for doing with the overgrowns, include that in the workshop to get some direction.
Thanks, GM. So seems the Councillor Duff there, we can work towards a workshop that addresses overgrown allotments, visual amenity issues, particularly around car bodies and other rubbish laying around yards, I suppose, for want of a better term, and also the issue, clarification on the issue in relation to unsafe and unhealthy dwellings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Would I be able to move?
Not at this stage, Councillor Duff. I just want to get
No?
this one done. Thank you. Yep, thank you. So we have the recommendation there that the Environment and Waste Services update be received for information. Do we have a mover? Councillor Potter, thank you. Seconder? Councillor Shoemaker. Any speakers for or against? Go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Councillor Duff?
Would I be able to just move a motion to put a timeline on a workshop? Because, I've been trying to get something happening for a long, long time. So could I just put a proposal forward that a workshop be convened by, and I'll be guided by the team, but I was thinking the 30th of September, with an information report for council on options to deal with defining unacceptable visual amenity issues. Oh, yeah, so
Couple of things. Given if it's a workshop, you won't drop out the information report. I mean, there would be information in it, but I'd be reluctant to formally start producing reports for workshops like that.
We might just need to amend that in light of that.
Yeah, just drop. It's just workshop convened by. Grammar. Just drop out.
Just take out with an information report.
Yeah, just
take
for
those
the
4 words out. Does that look better, Mr. CEO?
Yeah,
so just a workshop
just as a, just
for council on options.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Residential, is that residential adjustments, residential allotments?
So, Mayor, with regards to dates and times, part of the issue sometimes is actually finding space when we can get all you guys together. How about rather than a workshop, but how about if we tag that onto your September Community Engagement Day,
I think that's a good suggestion.
and then
Yeah.
that way we can just knock it over on the same day because it'd only be really an hour or so.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm very comfortable with that. Councillor Duff,
Mr Mayor.
is everyone happy with that? Have it on our CED in September as part of, be convened as part of the Community Engagement Day. Yes. So, Councillor Duff, just to clarify, your motion talks about visual amenity and residential allotments. So that's different to what you were saying in relation to the unsafe and unhealthy matter. All right, so you've got two. Yeah. Well done, Linnell.
Because it's not just residential allotments, though,
It would include
isn't it,
rural.
councillor?
Yeah.
It's
I'd
rural
take
res.
residential out, would you not, Councillor Duff? Yeah, because there could be rural
Yeah, just leave it allotments, yes.
on allotments. Manager, more comfortable with that. Councillor Duff, are you comfortable with that motion?
Yes, Mr Mayor.
Okay, you cover that. Do we have a seconder? Seconder, thanks, Councillor Potter. Okay, anyone wish to speak for or against that? Councillor Jones?
Yeah, just quickly, Mr Mayor, I've said it all along, it's sometimes you've got to be careful what you wish for. Once we start looking at unsafe and unhealthy living arrangements, we've got to be very careful because we might fix that problem, but we might create a hell of a big problem somewhere else in another situation. So I just want to bring it to the attention of all councillors that, yes, it's not that I disagree with what Councillor Duff is putting forward, unsafe and unhealthy. I get that, but we just need to be very careful on this because this could create another major issue in another way.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Anyone else? Any other speakers? We'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. We'll just note that Councillor Schumacher had left the room. Okay. Thank you, Councillor Duff. Now, Councillor Duff, and can I say to Manager Patch, congratulations. To GM O'May, commiserations. And to GM Jarvis, congratulations on a coup in securing Manager Patch into your team. Well done. I think his track record speaks for itself. Yeah, I'm sure he'll do a sterling job.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. And I'd just like to say that I do feel really bad for Peter leaving at this particular juncture in time because now he's got 3 of his 4 managers vacant, which is no reflection upon Peter whatsoever.
No, it's not simply circumstances, but I'm sure Peter will address that. I'm sure you'll be around to help Peter out if he needs a hand from here time to time. I imagine it's all about teamwork, isn't it? Okay, so where are we up to? We're up to 9.1. Yep, the Rural Resilience, Parks and Gardens, Properties and Facilities, Indigenous Affairs Portfolio Report at page 55. Thank you, Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So the first item is rural resilience. Following the withdrawal of funding from the Churches of Christ Rural Chaplaincy Program, which was an important service for our rural community, Council has been working on ways to regain something similar to support our farmers. Recently, I've had held discussions with a not-for-profit funding body called Australian Horizons Foundation, who have a key focus on supporting mental health. They realise the issues faced by our region and are keen to support a program similar to the Rural Chaplaincy Program. I've spoken with the CEO of Churches of Christ, Tim McMenamin, who fully supports reinstating a position for the South Benin if funding is available and is developing a proposal to be submitted to the AHF for consideration. Mergen Show Society hosted a successful Farmers' Day out, which I officially opened. It was great to see the number of stall holders and service providers, which was well supported by our local farming families, and it was also great to see the South Burnett Regional Council Library on the day promoting the First Five Forever program. Thank you, Councillor Potter, for your support on the day. Parks and gardens. I must say, as driving around the region, it is great to notice the works that are being undertaken by our parks and garden staff that is lifting the image of our villages and towns. The bollards, mulching and planting improvements at Memrambi is a prime example. How good are the gardens looking in Nanango? Just starting to flower, and the CBD gardens in Wandai and Mergen are looking neat and tidy. The wooden table and chair settings in Wandai have all been thoroughly cleaned in readiness for repainting. The Kingaroy Dog Park has also received some improvements this month, with concrete block seating installed around the sandpit area and deco laid in the centre area to minimise dust. Maintenance has been undertaken on the walking track in Railway Park Proston in readiness for the commencement of the Proston Park Run. Bird spraying is continuing across the region, and spot mowing is also taking place as needed. Public amenities have been hit hard again this month in Kingaroy with vandalism and graffiti at Rotary Park, Apex and Lions Park. Staff and cleaning contractors do an amazing job cleaning up the mess following these events and try their best to have limited closure for the community. I'd also like to thank the staff that assisted with the recent careers market at TAFE, showcasing and talking to students from the South Burnett about the NRM and Parks job and trainee possibilities within our council. Aerodromes. The scheduled weekly inspections are continuing at the Kingaroy and Wandai aerodromes. Kingaroy Aerodrome was closed on the 30th of July from 7 a.m. to 11 a.m. so that pavement repairs could be undertaken on the main runway 1634. Council has received notification from QFES that the hazard reduction training exercise burn at the Kingaroy Aerodrome is now scheduled for the 14th and 15th August, weather dependent. We are hoping the weather will be kind to us this time, as the 3 attempts prior were cancelled due to rain events that left the area too wet to access. I've had the pleasure of inspecting the work to date on the wildlife fence at Wandai Aerodrome. It looks amazing and will certainly give the aerodrome not only wildlife exclusion, but added security around the whole perimeter once completed. Also great news for Kingaroy Aerodrome, with Maranoa MP David Littleproud announcing on Thursday, July 29th, that the Kingaroy Aerodrome will be soon upgraded with the state-of-the-art lighting, thanks to $266,878 of funding from round 2 of the Australian Government's Regional Airports program. The project will remove the existing lighting infrastructure and reinstate with new compliant lighting infrastructure to help make night landings and take-off safer. Cemeteries. General maintenance is continuing in all cemeteries across the region, with fertilising and watering taking place in Mergen, Wandai and Tabinga Lawns sections. Dams. Following the completion of the Contractor Conference Centre, dam managers have advised that the complex is now fully booked out to the 24th of December and are turning others away daily. It's also with sadness that I announced that the annual Bjelke Peterson Dam Inland Fishing Classic competition that was scheduled for the 2nd to 3rd of October has been postponed due to the low water levels in the dam. The committee regrets making this decision, but under the safety of the competitors, it is of the utmost importance as the dam level is currently under 7%. I also just wanted to mention that Heath and Rowena, their little girl, Summer, was flown out. She had she was in intensive care for a number of days, and she's back in the ward, but they still haven't worked out what was wrong with her. It was an infection of some sort, but it was brought to my attention that Heath, who's the manager of both dams, stayed to make sure the dams were everything was running smoothly, and Rowena went down and stayed with Summer. So that's commitment. So I just wanted a big shout out to the managers, because they're doing it tough at the moment with not actually knowing what's wrong with their little girl. The rail trail spraying has been completed by Parks and Garden staff on the Kingaroy to Wandai section of the trail, with the Wandai to Mergen scheduled in the coming week. Property and facility management. Classical Stone Australia has completed 4 days of restoration works at Badooma Homestead. This work included setting up sample areas on the stone walls, store walls, for repairing termite mortar on 3 sides of the store. Works have been labelled, photographed and monitored for shrinking and swelling of materials. The hanging of Hessian bags over the replaced termite mortar was used to slow the drying of the mortar. The termite ant bed material was collected from site and surrounding properties to form the mortar. This site will be monitored over the next 12-month period. If these repairs are successful, further works will be implemented in 12 months' time. This project is very slow, but the contractor and the volunteers are committed to achieving the best outcome for the preservation of the historic stone store. Also, fencing contractor and volunteers have been working on the repairs to the timber stockyards. Timber has been cut from local properties and donated by local landholders. Volunteers worked with council to remove each individual rail, number rails, photograph site and help manage restoration, and to meet Queensland State Heritage permits and approvals. Old times tools such as adzes and axes have been used to prepare timber rails and notched into the timber posts. Madumas Homestead have made the difficult decision to cancel Scots in the Bush for 2021 due to COVID lockdown and restrictions for travellers from southeast Queensland and interstate. The Madooma Museum and Heritage Association are very committed to keeping volunteers and the community safe from COVID transfers. Madooma Museum and Heritage Association have been successful in applying for a gambling community benefit fund to develop a conservation plan for this state heritage listed site. This project will receive $35,000 grant funds and $5,000 from Council's operational budget as per Council's 2021-22 adopted budget. Council has commenced the planning and designing phase for other capital building projects. Tenders and quotation requests have been issued for Kingaroy air conditioning, PCYC squash court repairs and replacement program for facility security fencing. Maintenance works that have been completed under the W4Q Round 4 includes replacement of acid pump at South Burnett Aquatic Centre, replacement of the air conditioner at Kingaroy Depot Workshop Office and Waste Management Shed Office. Indigenous Affairs Portfolio. South Burnett Regional Council held NAIDOC celebrations in the Kingaroy forecourt to coincide with the Star of Taroom Walk. This was an opportunity for our community to partake in this historic event as the Star of Taroom made its journey from Brisbane back to Taroom to its original resting place. Many activities were conducted to entertain our community. These included the Waka Waka dances, face painting, Dreamtime stories from the library and the Kingaroy High School students outlining the importance of the NAIDOC theme, Hill Country. The Mayor and I accompanied the Star of Taroom walk from Crawford to Rarullan to be part of this historic journey. The Star of Taroom then travelled to Wandai, Cherbourg and Mergen before heading to Coes Park, where a smoking ceremony was undertaken prior to leaving our region. South Burnett residents were invited by Queensland Health and the Cherbourg community to participate in the Pfizer pop-up clinic, which was held at Cherbourg Community Hall. This was a great opportunity for the South Burnett community to stand side by side with the Cherbourg community in the fight against COVID. And that concludes my report. I'd like to move my report for adoption. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Henson. Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question in relation to that aerodrome funding by member David Littleproud, Minister David Littleproud. So the federal government fund was funded under round 2, the $266,878 to improve the lighting in Kingaroy, which is fabulous. But I did read that the North Burnett Regional Council received $1.165 million to remove the old fences and construct new animal-proof fences at 4 of their airports. And my question was, do we apply for this funding regularly? And I'm just looking at the forward plan here and I understand the work's already been done at Wandai, but for the fencing for the aerodrome at Kingaroy, we're talking about using Works for Queensland funding. I'm actually wondering if we shouldn't put that in the pipeline for this funding. Are they regular funding rounds? I wasn't aware of an application, so just appreciate more information because certainly North Burnett have proved you can get significant funds to improve your airports, regional airports.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, so we have looked at the difference here. I assume that the North Burnett region airports will be classed as remote. We have a difficulty. The classifications on airstrips, ours in the regional bucket. So I know we've looked at this previously. A lot of the Western airports can get fencing, and frustrating as it would, just where we sit in relation to airports, we're not eligible for that bucket. So I'm assuming theirs would have been under a similar sort of program, but it's for remote airstrips. So yeah, I know at Bullya exactly had the same thing, got funding for fencing. So I'm assuming the North Burnett ones, they would be classified as that. So yes, we do look at those and have for the last couple of years and swear every time they come out and we look at the maps and say, no, we're on the wrong side of the line. So yeah, that would be, I would assume, it is different buckets, and so this is actually for just to replace the lighting, so relevant probably for the regional airports, whereas yeah, the fencing and animal fencing probably does stick into that other category which we're not eligible for.
Right, thank you for that clarification. And just a supplementary question. So in terms of our aerodromes in this fund, do we have some other identified projects in the pipeline that we'll be applying for in the other rounds sort of coming up that do meet the criteria, or is that?
Yeah, I think, well, as you'll be aware, we've just gone out for the master planning for the airport, so I think that will be the document that will guide what the next projects will be, so yeah.
No, thank you for the clarification. Great work in securing the funding for the lighting.
Okay, Councillor Duff.
Just one question. I've had a complaint from a caravan owner. Is council required to have a QR code and contact tracing app in our free camping grounds? So it just was a question that was asked of me.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, so we do have in our facilities, we do have the QR codes at those free camps sites. So, yeah, people should be in the amenities block is generally where there's a couple of those located around. So, yeah, if there's a facility where they've been taken down or blown off or something, then they can let us know. But we do have them at those camps around. Yep.
Is there a specific location,
Yeah,
Councillor?
I think it's Mergen, but maybe it's because do you only have to do it if you use the amenities? Because you have to get a key for that. Maybe it's because some of them aren't doing that and they don't need to use the app. I'm not sure, but it is Mergen.
Yeah, so ultimately, like with all of the QR codes, it's the responsibility of the individual to scan in. As the organisation, we've got the obligation. I'm sure they've probably got them on the outside that they could scan in. So it is the obligation of the individual to scan in. But yeah, we try to facilitate as much as we can.
Thanks, GM. Are there any other questions, comments on the report? If not, we'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Now, 9.2, the Parks and Gardens update at page 58. Manager Watt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the first section is Works for Queensland Round 4. So as you can see, most of those projects need to be specified and scoped. However, I would make a change to the Wandai and the Kingaroy aerodrome perimeter fencing. Particularly Wandai, it's underway, and I think the portfolio councillor has had a look at the fencing and made comment about that, I think. So those ones are progressing. Otherwise, the other ones need to be scoped and firmed up and brought back for council consideration. The CapEx, so we're putting in basically columbarium walls at Blackbutt and Wandai, so we're running out of space. Parks, there's a Apex Park, car park at Apex Park Kingaroy, and we hope to perhaps do the footpath in that if we can afford it. The master planning is for Memorial Park, Sawyards is Coolabunga, which we know is part of the funding application, and the Mergen Rail Trail Crossing, which we're waiting to scope up as well. So cemetery update, you can see that we've got pretty consistent numbers for July. I'm not sure whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, but numbers don't lie. So dam updates, so those numbers are presented there for council. You can see, unfortunately, this time last year there was zero due to COVID closures, so that was a bit of catching up to do during that period. But as you saw in the portfolio report, that numbers are quite high in those locations, so it's very, very positive for council and great for the region. The customer requests, so we've got plenty of them coming through each month, and we're actively dealing with those. I guess based on the positive feedback we're getting, we would like to see those complaints as an opportunity and not a complaint. So if you can fix the complaint and fix the system, you're onto a good start. So that's how we approach it. Operational update, council is well aware of that activity as well. So that's the parks update, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Manager. Good to see the numbers are up at BP Dam and Boondooma Dam. My scouts tell me that there are people queued up at the border outside New South Wales waiting for the Premier, Queensland Premier, to let them in. So could I suggest that you're going to be inundated at some point in time when the border opens, because they are looking to flood back into regional southern Queensland again once the New South Wales matter is resolved. So gear up for a busy time probably towards the end of the year. Manager and your contractors at the dams, I would suggest, from what I'm being told. Okay, any questions, comments on that? Councillor Jones?
Yeah, Mr Mayor. The Works for Queensland projects, this is just the park section, which was, I believe, around about 2 million allocated out of that 5.6.
Yep,
Is that correct, Mark?
that's correct.
And these projects, are they taking up all that money? Is that?
Yep.
So, keeping in mind that we moved in the budget that these were going, or the expenditure was coming back after the first quarter, I see some projects there that are missing that I would like to see involved in that. So, what's the process there? Were we not supposedly putting the Works for Queensland money on hold until the first quarter to come back before expenditure? What was the go there, Mark, Mr CEO?
So I didn't think it was after first quarter, just straight off recollection. It would be before first quarter, and then so everything was ready for first quarter. It's one of the ones now that COVID, with my leave in July, and then COVID restrictions is, when I was talking about dates for workshops before, the Works for Queensland and I always get my initials wrong, LRCI money, the next round, is to sit down and workshop with councillors those projects, works for those 2 grant projects, but also while we're workshopping them, it's not just these immediate ones. One of the things that we're like to engage with council is over the 3 years of Works for Queensland, what the 3-year program looks like, so that we don't get caught with, what are we doing next year? What are we doing next year? So that we get a program for the 3 years for the W4Q. When I say lockdown, the cyclones, floods, there's always reason for change, but it's a pretty consistent program. So between this next couple of weeks, we'll find a date and we'll be workshopping Works for Queensland and LRCI. Is short answer long.
Thanks, Mr CEO. Okay, well, we've got the report received for information. Do we have a mover? Someone? Councillor Potter, Councillor Shoemaker, second. Thank you. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. The Properties Operational Update, page 63. Welcome, Manager Leanne.
South Benin Aquatic Centre, you're aware that those bathroom refurbishments will commence in December. Wandai Showgrounds Grandstand will commence. It's on track to commence at the end of August. Once again, we just need to watch what happens with COVID and the supply of materials. Kingaroy CCT forecourt, that was on hold with contractors last week, but they're back on site next week, so it'll be great to finish that work in the forecourt. The Mergen shops, we've got some major asbestos removal, and we're just calling for quotations for that to happen there, and then we'll be able to reline those walls and get those particular shops up and going again, ready for rental. You'll see a large amount of work in the leasing area with our leasing officer. There's a lot of inquiries and requests coming in from community organisations. So you'll see a list there that we're working through, backwards and forwards, negotiating leases. And you see those reports come through our council meetings here, but certainly providing a lot of support to those groups. We've also got the tender documents out for the Wandai, Nango and Proston dip facilities at the moment. You've got your land sales. There's probably no properties there at the moment listed for sale with our real estate agents. You've got a report and a presentation coming back to council very shortly on the land sales project. You've got your building asset management works that are occurring there, and some additional projects that Tony is assisting us with at Binduma Homestead. The swimming pools are taking up a fair bit of work. And yeah, we're doing some work at the Blackbutt SES and getting some quotations there for consideration for council, because we've got some roof leakages and some asbestos to attend to down there. So that's our operational update. Thank you.
Oh, well done, Manager Leanne. There's a lot happening, of course, in properties, as is always the case.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, well, we've got the report there. Do we have a mover that be received? Thank you, Councillor Duff. Second, I think it's Councillor Froloff. Questions? No? Go to the vote. Those in favour? Hang on, sorry, I jumped the gun. Councillor Potter, thank you.
Sorry. Through you, Mr Mayor. Look, I won't lie, I am very concerned about Kingaroy Pool, the cost of maintenance, the cost of repairs. As I mentioned last time, we've spent a lot of money on this pool, and the fact that it's leaking, and I really don't think that even repairing this leak this time is actually going to fix the problem wholly and solely. The pool is old. When we're old, we fall to pieces. And I think our pool has reached that time that it's getting there, and I think we really need to consider where we're going with the Kingaroy Pool. I know we're looking at future plans, but we're going to spend a lot of money on this pool now, and I'm thinking we should reconsider what we're doing. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Potter. Good observation, and obviously a lot more work to be done in that space. Anything to add to that at this stage, Manager, in terms of the process moving forward now with the pool?
That's okay. Yes, certainly we would like to bring back a detailed report on the asset condition of the entire pool. It's not just the expansion joints and the wall of the pool, it's also the plant and all your external buildings as well. So yes, in summary, the pool is in very poor condition. This will give us hopefully a repair to get us through this year and maybe next year. But the walls are certainly showing a lot of movement in that soil type and the age of the pool. Yeah, most definitely. So I haven't got good news for the pool coming forward. But yes, it's something that we need to consider. What are our options in the future? And it really needs a thorough report. But we need to have a look at a master plan as well. Where does the pool sit in the future in that particular landscape down there?
Thank you, Manager. Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. Just a question. I did raise it. I think I sent an email, sent so many lately. Just had a couple of inquiries from local residents around the change in operators for the Kingaroy swimming pool and what the opportunities will be to book swimming lessons, coaching, these sorts of things. There's significant concern, particularly from those who have been on coaching programs around that transition. So I just wondered what's sort of in the pipeline in terms of communicating the change, and of course the opportunities for local residents to start to book in their swimming lessons and things for the upcoming period. I really want to get on the front foot with that one.
Yep, so most definitely for both Kingaroy and Mergen, we're very aware that Kingaroy, the new pool managers have met with the swimming club last week. So they had a face-to-face meeting and sat down and talked to all the parents and the members there at that club about what they have on offer, how they're going to work with them in the future. So that has happened, and that was a very positive meeting. The other thing that the new pool manager has done in Kingaroy is made contact with the existing staff that was previously employed as well. So we just needed to give the existing pool manager time to speak to their staff and their clients as well. So that occurred over the first week. The second week now you'll see that the new pool manager is making contact to just reassure that there are employment opportunities and all sorts of wonderful opportunities for the existing staff as well that used to work there. And then they've been talking to us, and I've got a meeting this week about their rollout of how they're going to engage with the community now with their social media, their Facebook page, new web page, on all the different programs that they're going to have on offer. So they're gearing up for that. We'll see what that looks like this week. Up in Mergen, they've actually started their advertising. You may have seen that, where they're starting to advertise for new staff, and also their programs that they're going to have on offer. They're just probably getting a bit of a feel for the community up there in terms of what expertise and staff are up there that's willing to work with them. But they're on the front foot in Mergens, and they're starting to work through that. So all positive at this stage, and you'll see a lot more come out through the media.
Yeah, thank you for the update.
Yeah, thank you, Manager. Okay, so we've got the update received, and we'll put that to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Rightio, so we're on to 9.4, which is the naming of the park in Proston. The recommendation is as presented there, to that the park be named Rundle Park. And do we have a mover for the recommendation as presented? Councillor Duff, and a seconder. Thanks, Councillor Potter. Would we have any speakers for or against? Further questions required? No? Okay. We'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 9.5. Tabinga Cemetery expansion, page 74. Again, recommendation is as presented there. Do we have a mover? Councillor Potter, thank you. Seconder, Councillor Jones. Do we have any speakers for or against, or any questions in relation to the recommendation? The expansion of the Tabinga Cemetery? No? Okay, we'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. 9.6, the public amenities cleaning contracts at 79. Recommendation as presented. Oh, sorry, it does indeed. I've skipped one ahead. Didn't turn the page over. Okay, so recommendation is that the report of the public amenities cleaning contracts be taken off the table. Do we have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Potter. Second, Councillor Duff. Okay, those in favour? Carried unanimously. Okay, the matter is now at hand, and the recommendation is as provided there. Get that, Linnell, thank you. Okay, so the recommendation speaks of seeking tenders for cleaner public amenities in Kingaroy, the Nango, Mergen, Blackbutt, Banarkin and Wondai as presented. Do we have a mover? Councillor Duff, thank you. A seconder? Councillor Jones. Speakers for or against? Speaking, no. Jump the gun. It's been a long day, Councillor Potter. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Heisel Rail Trail Land at, this one's at page 79, sorry. And recommendation, again, as presented there in relation to that land. Do we have a mover? Mover for that recommendation? No? No one wants to move that one? Okay, so the recommendation, would you like me to work through it? No. Councillor Duff, are you moving that recommendation?
I just wanted to add a third dot point, that was all.
Okay, please proceed.
So can I, do we?
Yes, you can add an addition to
add
that.
So an option, to an option for a sublease of the land to the Highsville Progress Association to be included. So
Okay, so
just as an
Linnell,
option.
can we perhaps just put that as 2C? Meet with the Highsville Progress Association to discuss item C, options for leasing of the land.
Sublease, it would be a sublease of the land. just
Options for
put it as an
subleasing.
option, yeah. Well, it's railway land, so it would be
Of
a
the-
sublease.
Land. That'll be fine, won't it? Is that all you need there, councillor Duff?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, not really a major change to the recommendation, Mr CEO, from a regulation point of view, simply an addition, happy with that? Yep, okay, so we've got that there. Yes, councillor Potter, please,
Just
yep,
a
go ahead.
question, sorry, Mr Mayor. Is ours already a sublease on that, or so this might be a sublease that we're doing? I had a feeling that we had a sublease on that one, not the actual
You could
lease.
indeed be correct.
Yeah, through you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, that's correct. So this would be a sublease, but the option for subleasing of the land, that statement is probably still correct. It would be a sublease of our sublease. So it would be a sub. So
Councillor Potter will be correct, but ultimately, if we go ahead, it'll be a sublease. Yes, yes, you're very good. You're on the ball, councillor Potter. Thank you. So we've got the recommendation there as presented on screen. Oh, sorry, councillor Froloff. Thank you.
Sorry, through you, Mayor, can I ask just a quick question? For them to sublease this parcel of land, that doesn't give them the rail trail from Hydesville to Proston? Just double checking, I thought
No.
it'd be a way
Now,
to get around.
councillor Froloff, it's a good question. If anyone's watching out there being concerned, this is the piece of land on the corner across from the hotel. It's not on the rail trail as it's known from Proston to Hydesville. But good question. Thank you, councillor, for clarifying. I'm just going to get this one up. Do we have a mover for that? Councillor Duff's moved it. Councillor Froloff has seconded it. We'll now go to speakers. Councillor Henson, any comments on that one?
Yeah, just a question. When asset management implications states the Hydesville Progress Association has proposed that council be responsible for ongoing management of the asset once developed. If we go to the bottom of the page and it states a similar project has been developed over many years on the head of the Blackbutt Rail Trail and all community groups in Blackbutt maintain the grounds and all infrastructure they place on the rail trail. So that being said, am I under the impression that in the event of the Hydesville Progress Association trying to implement what they want to do there, it then becomes another maintenance issue for council?
Manager, what's happening there? I would have thought would be consistent in our approach.
Yeah, through you, Mr Mayor, and this is probably why the wording of the resolution is where we did want to meet with the Hydesville Progress Association to go through the concept, the estimated costs, basically to determine those requirements, who is going to be responsible for the future assets on the land. So we'd be really keen for council to fully understand those implications before we enter into a sublease. So that was basically the idea. We need to get Main Roads on board, obviously, as the head leaseor. So as liaise with them, liaise with the Progress Association, because a number of the options that they may want to progress, if it is at their cost, then that's obviously they'll be looking for funding or whatever. So we need to be really clear. So that's why the resolution actually talks about meeting with the Hydesville to flesh out all of those. So it's really not clear that the expectations between council and the association. So I think a good pick-up from Councillor Henson, but we really want to bed all of those down before we actually commit to a lease.
Yep. Thank you, General Manager. Thank you, Councillor Henson. Okay. So any further commentary in relation to the motion? If not, we'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Okay, 9.8 is a proposed agreement between Kingaroy and District Vintage Machinery Club and Council for land at Kingaroy Aerodrome. That's at page 86. The recommendation is as presented, effectively extending the lease for another 12 months at $75 on those three parcels there, C, G and F. So as presented, do we have a mover? Councillor Schumacher, seconder. Thank you, Councillor Jones. Speakers for or against? Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Tender for real estate sales services at page 91. Sorry, page 90. Now, Manager, can you lead us in on this one? A little bit of background and where we're going with this. Thank you.
Yeah, so in the past, council has appointed a local real estate agent for their services. If council goes to tender on a parcel of land and we're unsuccessful at that tender, council then has the option to actually list the parcel of land with a real estate agent, and they would then market the property for us. So at the moment, that arrangement, that contract arrangement that we had in place has expired. So it's time to go back out and actually invite local real estate agents across the region to tender for their services. So going forward, we're just getting ready. Going forward, if we were to have any parcels of land that went to tender, were unsuccessful, and council chose to list them with a real estate agent, then we would have someone appointed ready to act on that.
Okay, thank you, Manager. Rightio, any questions in relation to that? Councillor Duff?
I just wanted to put an addition, like an amendment or an addition to the end of that, because you have actually said that you'd like to be going to all the towns. So I think that needs to be clarified in the recommendation. So if we said in the towns, and what are we able to name?
We left it open just in case we didn't receive anyone in a particular town. But yep, certainly if you want to add per town.
So where the real estate agents are, like there's a real estate agent in Mergen, Wandai, Kingaroy, Nanango and Blackbutt. There's none in Proston. So I just thought...
So you're proposing to add the names of the towns?
In the towns of Mergen, Wandai, Kingaroy, Nanango and Blackbutt. So that well, we did...
Is it? Sure.
Not sure about that one. Yeah, have to check. What would you rather just say in each of the towns in the South Burnett?
In each of the towns, because the idea of this recommendation, as far as I'm aware, is to try and get the real estate agent in each town to be the one that has the tender for that particular town.
Yeah, okay. That is the intent. We have had some difficulties in the past when you have a property marketed with a real estate agent, so that real estate agent has been appointed here in Kingaroy and the property was down in Blackbutt. We found it very difficult because the people that come in and inquire, they want to go and they inquire in Blackbutt. So they don't think to drive through to Kingaroy and necessarily want to sit down and talk to the real estate agent in Kingaroy about the property in Blackbutt. So at times we have found it a little bit challenging, and we don't want to limit and lose, a potential purchaser just because we've got it marketed in the wrong town. So yes, from an administration point of view, it's great to have one real estate manager manage all of our sales across the region, but I think for the purpose of getting the best sale possible, it's probably better off having a real estate agent in that particular town market the property.
All right, do we have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Jones. Speakers for or against? Councillor Schumacher.
Yes. Oh, sorry. I was just more curious around how you determine, because I'm mindful in some towns there are more than one real estate agent. So just in the previous tender process, or what sort of criteria you'd be looking at to determine which real estate agents to use.
you know, and I don't want to unpack that, but I do recognise how challenging that could be. So yeah, I was probably curious around what your ideas were or how you were going to frame this. Manager Peterson, noting your extensive experience in the area.
Look, really, it's a competitive tender. Okay, so it's going to have some weighting around their price, their commission. So we want them to be competitive. So obviously that will be heavily weighted. If someone puts in a great tender but decides to take 50% of the commission, you know, they're certainly not going to win the tender. So it's around being a competitive tenderer and around price. And the other thing is going to come down to his experience and expertise in how they're going to market the property. So we would like to make sure that they're going to market the property quite extensively through whatever networks that they have associated themselves with or affiliated themselves. So LJ Hooker, for example, is across Queensland, isn't it? So some of these real estate agents are associated with big organisations and can market quite extensively. So that's the sort of thing we're interested in.
No, I look forward to, thank you for the clarification. And I think this is great. It aligns with Council's keen interest to follow on from the work you're doing around identifying parcels of land that we have and what might be the right purpose for them into the future. So well done.
Okay, if there's no further speakers, we'll go to the vote on this one. In favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 9.10, social housing funding application, page 91. Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think everyone's aware of the problems we have with homelessness, and it's increasing across our region. So I've would like to submit a motion that we put an application to the Resources Community Infrastructure Fund round 1 with CTC as a project partner to invest in 18 low-cost 1 and 2 bedroom units across the town. So I've got a motion around putting forward a social housing funding application. So I've got some background, and I just wanted to.
So, Councillor, let's get the motion into Lynelle's hands so she can get that up on the screen, and then I think we'll get you to talk to that in advance of seeking a seconder. Can we do that?
So,
and we've got a notice of motion on that as well. Yes. So, should we deal with? Are we able to deal with them separately, or do you want to deal with them together? You want to escalate?
Can we put 2 up? Or sorry.
Yep, sorry, thank you. There is, okay, so probably as far as the application, there is a notice of motion that is sitting there, and we had time to prepare a report in support of that. Again, not prosecuting which one. I believe you can put 2, but whether you would be able to adequately resource 2 applications would be a fair and reasonable discussion. And certainly I'm probably going to sound like I'm supporting the dark fibre one, but there's been a lot of background work, and I know the dark fibre one's ready to go. So, but anyway, certainly, yeah, if we get the resolution, that'd be probably helpful. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. I'm going to intervene here, Councillor Duff. I think we perhaps need to consider both of those matters side by side. So I just put procedural motion up that we escalate item 10.1 as the next item on the agenda. I think Councillor Potter's going to second that because she's got a light on. Yep. Yes, so thank you, Danita. Yep. Why don't it go off? Like we've got a broken microphone. Thank you. So I'll put that up as procedural motion. Let's move item 10.1 up, deal with it, so that we can deal with those 2 items together, perhaps. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Potter, yep. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. So we'll now go to 10.1. I've got a notice of motion for CCTV cameras and security lighting. So just look at that there. So I've got a motion there, that committee recommends to council that special capital funding be provided to install CCTV cameras in strategic locations, subject to privacy legislation, on the Kingaroy Rail Trail from the Youngman Street entry point to the intersection with Myers Road, and install security lighting at the intersection of the rail trail and Myers Road. So in moving that, I might just provide a little bit of background. So we had, of course, a meeting with the police where they indicated that security cameras are particularly effective for them in terms of being able to not only deter activities, but also to be able to obviously deal with illegal activities. And this is also, I suppose, following up from representations we've had from members of the community in relation to inappropriate activity that's happening along that section. Now, it includes, of course, illegal dumping, but there's a range of other activities, undesirable and, in fact, illegal activities happening along that particular part of the rail trail. I've had a look at that section of the rail trail, and there's probably about 7 locations which are entry and exit points onto that fairly secluded strip. And if we were able to consider installing cameras and lighting at those, there is a view, at least from the residents, that would have a significant impact on reducing the amount of inappropriate and illegal activity that's happening along that strip. So hence the motion. Having said that, I'm also aware, though, the discussion we've had today about not signing a blank cheque. So we would want to obviously get some costings around this, determine the number. If we wanted to proceed, determine the number and determine the cost. Happy to change the motion to reflect that if that's the appetite of the committee. So I'd now, I think at this stage, at least to get the debate happening, put that up as presented. So I'll move that and seek a seconder, if I could. We have a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Freiloff. Councillors, let's questions, comments. Councillor Schumacher. No.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just reading over our Community Engagement Day meeting minutes because we did meet on the 24th of May and absolutely supportive of getting some action in terms of improving the safety in this area. Just, a recap on the discussions from our meeting. We all agreed that looking into some sort of form of solar lighting and rotating cameras along the rail trail was something that council was keen to consider and look into. And there was some discussion around, the potential to drive around barricades and looking at maybe some bollards or something to stop people from entering the rail trail. So I think from the discussions that we've had, everyone's in agreement that we need to do something about this. I probably want to understand more around the costs and around how, in terms of your wording, special capital funding. I wasn't aware we have special capital funding. But, if this is a project that we want to put in the pipeline for CapEx, I think it's important that we do that work and look at it holistically. So for me, I think there's also lighting and bollards and potentially some signage that needs to be considered. And I think I'd like the staff and the team to be able to package this up. And it was my understanding that work was kind of going to happen following the Community Engagement Day. So I probably wanted to check in with where we're at. So we met on the 24th of May. It's now the 11th of August. So I just thought I'd check in and see what work's actually been happening behind the scenes before making any decision here.
Yeah, I can start with just having a look at the CCTV that has been tasked to us. So we've started to have a relook at the register. So council does have a register of CCTV cameras across the region. They are outside, they're in our parkland, they're in our waste facility, and then they're also within some of the grounds of our buildings. So there's a number of them. They're all very different. They're quite aged, and how they actually record the data is all very different. So some of them are on loops where the data is kept for a number of days and then it clears out and then it starts recording again. Some of them are recorded for long periods of time and then some of them are not. Some of them go to a disk and some of them like an SD card. So there's a variety of different types of cameras and they're quite aged. What we'd like to do is come back. We need to review and look at how we're going to move into a better CCTV program across the region, because there's a number of cameras where we think they're active and they're working, and then when an incident occurs, then we find out that that particular camera isn't working. So, yeah, they need a fair bit more work yet, and then we would bring that back to council. The other thing that we were looking at as well is not just CCTV, but also some of our security lighting and security fencing across the region. There's a large number of facilities that have security fencing, and that fencing is also cut and damaged and completely rusted out. It's got holes in it. So we've got barriers in place to try to help with security, and they're probably failing as well on some of our facilities. So we're probably going to package it all up as a major security type project and bring it back to council for consideration for a capital works or other funding opportunities. And that's where we're heading under that crime prevention and safer communities grant, and that's where a fair bit of work has started under that. And then we realised that we're probably not eligible for one of those grants. So, yeah, we're working in that space. Have we got it finalised? No, we haven't. Yeah, it's a little bit bigger than what we initially thought, because it's not just in facilities. And as you can imagine, a lot of these places where you want cameras, we don't have power and we don't have data connection. So where that images that you're recording, how does that get back to a source? Where a lot of the buildings, it's hardwired in and it's cabled in and it goes to our storage system. So once you start moving into some of these remote locations, it's a little bit more difficult and obviously going to be a little bit more costly.
Okay, other speakers for or against? Councillor Jones.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. This certainly don't disagree with it, but my concerns are if we go put lighting out at the intersection of the rail trail at Myers Road. We all know what activities are going on out there at the minute, and we certainly go out there and address that situation. It pushes it to another area in our community. So do we follow these people around and continually lighting up the areas? That's just the concern there. You talk about CCTV footage along the rail trail from Youngman Street through to Myers Road. I would suggest that Mergen would have similar issues, and Bondi would have similar issues. I know Blackbutt has had similar issues with theft, illegal vehicle use, all that sort of stuff that also we've been dealing with the police and community down there to try and control that. So it's a difficult one. It's not that I disagree or anything like that, but I just have some concerns that if we start installing CCTV cameras across a particular section here, it certainly highlights the need to go across the whole region and look at that issue. As I just highlighted, I'm sure that there would be issues. I know for sure, and certainly in Blackbutt, we've been trying to get cameras and all that sort of stuff, been unsuccessful with grants and all that sort of stuff. And there has been a serious and significant amount of issues. I know over at Gameri, talking to different people that own land along the Gameri section of the rail trail have issues with the same sort of things that are going on at Myers Road. So it's all along that situation. So that's just some of the concerns that I have in actually so I would like to lead that there's a lot more work to be done in this. There's a lot of costing, as the Mayor has touched on, but today I can't feel confident in making a decision either way, but I know that there's some of the concerns that I thought of when I was thinking about this situation.
Okay, other councillors speak? Councillor Potter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was actually discussing this with some of the parks people, and we were talking about putting some of our parks cameras up there at one stage, just the sort, so not actually the CCTV ones, but just the parks ones, like the ones we had at Cloyner. So something along those lines might be good for start, and maybe we could lay this on the table to put for a discussion at a later date, because this will have implications on our budget moving forward.
Just before we give you a second chance, Councillor Schumacher, anyone else at this stage? Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, I support this. I think that the police have identified an issue here. The residents have identified an issue, and I think that we, again, as I said earlier, we've got to look at all these things on a case-by-case basis. That's why they come to council, and we've got an issue here. we've got an identified problem. We have an option for at least trying to address the situation. I think just putting it aside and laying it on the table is putting it in the too hard basket, turning a blind eye. We need to at some point front up and start to make some decisions around addressing these sort of problems. And because this has been identified and there is an issue, I think this one can be project number one, and we'll look at it as we move forward. Thank you.
Councillor Henson or Councillor Froloff, anything to add before we move on? No. Councillor Jones?
Yeah, just in response to that. So I take your point, councillor. So I'm telling you now that we have an issue down in Blackbutt. So if I add an amendment to this at number 3, install security lighting at the head of the rail trail at Blackbutt and all the way out to Benarkin, where I know and I can bring you proof that there is serious issues just like this, do we address that as well? Because this, all I'm saying is this needs to be further information. I can't make a decision either way because, as identified by a couple of people already, significant impacts on our budgets. It's been identified already today how tight our budget is and what we need to do. So I think there's more work and more information that needs to come back before I can commit to spending money.
Okay, Councillor Duff, we'll deal with this and then we'll come back to Councillor Shoemaker.
Sorry, that was a question to me. So yes,
Indeed.
yes. If you have the police come meet with council, identify that there's an issue at the head of the Blackbutt Rail Trail, and that you've got specific locations identified, certainly, and a resolution come to council, I'm all ears. Thank you.
Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I absolutely support doing something about this, and I absolutely support putting a project together. I'm wondering if you might consider changing your motion to enable that to happen. I'm not comfortable with allocating funding, noting that we've got so many different systems, noting that we don't really know what that funding amount is, and noting that from my perspective, this isn't just...
Councillors, thank you. Councillor Shoemaker.
Thank you. This isn't just CCTV. I think the lighting aspects of it need to be considered. We've talked about that Myers Road intersection, even just from an infrastructure point of view, and I think there are other aspects to that. So I probably want to see a project plan developed for this, and then highlight exactly, what it's going to cost and step by step how we get there. So I'm noting that we're doing the CCTV program, doing a lot of work around CCTV cameras, and there's a review to come back to council in relation to that. But I do want to see some sort of project put together in relation to fixing this problem so that it can be properly addressed by council. So I'm not supportive of allocating special capital funding. I am supportive of doing the investigation, coming back with a solution that will fix the problem or help to fix the problem, and a solution that has been quantified and validated so that when we go to allocate funding, we know exactly what we're allocating. Said that all along. So fully supportive. I don't think anybody in this council chamber isn't supportive of community safety outcomes in our region, and have noted that this is a problem, need to find a solution, but there needs to be more work done before I can support this. So are you able to amend your motion to consider, a project planning process or something of that nature? Because as Leanne has mentioned, there will be challenges around electricity and those sorts of things that need to be considered, whether we need solar options and cameras in general. So.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. Anyone else want to add before I suppose, write a reply and wrap this one up? And I certainly will answer that question. So just some background. There is about 7 strategic locations along that section that all have power supplied to them. So there are poles and power at each one of those, and I've actually driven along that with a local resident and identified that. It is a heavily trafficked area. A lot of people walk that in the mornings and afternoons with their dogs. A lot of elderly people walk along there. People use it as a running section. A lot of bike riders go there. The nature of the activity that we're seeing there is such that it is becoming a deterrent to people doing that. I am concerned that coming into the spring, warmer months, warmer nights, we're going to see perhaps an increase in the amount of that activity. So I'm keen to see something happen reasonably quickly. In terms of data, Manager Leanne, I'm being made aware that there is now Wi-Fi that can go back to the police with the data. So while there is electricity there, Wi-Fi technology is available. I'm also aware that there is lighting available that goes with the cameras. So cameras that are actually sensor-based, and they will actually activate lights as part of that camera technology. I'm thinking this is probably going to cost us somewhere in the order between $20,000 and $25,000 for the entire project, but that's only a rough estimate based on what I've been told these sorts of units cost. Yeah. So that's based on my research, but please don't take that as a given. That's a very rough estimate at this stage. Yeah, but that's the information I've been given.
That quote of 25,000, just wanted to confirm what it's actually costing for just our council chambers here. It was with connection to power.
A different system. And that's, yeah, I really don't want to talk about a security system and what we're implementing right here, but it's a completely different system in how we're storing that data and how you access that data and how you keep that data separate to the rest of our information. So, yeah, we probably just need some follow-up on that, but that may well be for a Pacific camera that is taking all the data back to Queensland Police. But in our case, all the data that we're collecting is stored within council.
Just a rough list of what I've got.
Very affordable for 7 locations.
They are about $2,000 per unit. I'm told by local suppliers, about $2,000 per unit, which includes the lighting, the sensor lighting, broad scale, high powered lighting, which is complemented by the camera facility, which Wi-Fi's back to the police. So look, that is a very rough estimate at this stage. If our scope of requirement is greater, that could double in price, I'm not sure. But look, I'm keen to see something happen on this fairly quickly because, we have been sitting on this for 3 months. Since the residents approached us. So from my point of view, I'm keen to see us do something. I am open-minded though, and see the need to perhaps get some more, or just not perhaps, certainly get some more specifics about what's needed, what'll do the job sufficiently well, and what will to get the outcome, and what's that going to cost. So I'm happy to change that that motion to ask for an investigation and a report to come back to council. Having said that, though, Mr. CEO, I'd like to be able to see that happen in a reasonable period of time.
Yeah, Mayor, just at the last, there has been a lot of discussion with this, and the word special probably, if we could just drop that one out. Yep.
Happy to take special out and just put CapEx there.
Yeah, the consideration that was resolved, and I just pulled up the resolution at last month's standing Exec and Finance Standing Committee, was a first quarter report back into the operational plan for the CCTV across the region, identifying a whole raft of these issues. So if capital funding was to be considered in the first quarter review, and then the rest of it's fine, and that'll just bring those two processes into line, and that'd be no later than the end of September. Yeah, I think that helps.
Yeah, look, end of September. I would hate to think that we're still sitting here at Christmas time fiddling around with this, and we've got that activity increasing. So, look, I'm comfortable with that. Put it into the budget review. So happy to construct a new motion.
Well, all we'd need is that capital funding be considered for the first quarter review to provide.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. CEO.
To provide, yeah, and then and that'll give us the September timeline.
Yes.
And it brings it into line with the operational plan and pulling all the other CCTV cameras together too.
I'm very happy with that. Thank you, Mr. CEO. I think that's a very good solution. Okay, so I'm happy to amend that, change that. Councillor Frodoff, are you happy with that change from a seconder's point of view? Okay, anyone wish to speak further with that change now? If not, we'll go to the vote.
So, Mr. Mayor, we just need to take the word install out of both those to provide CCTV.
Oh yeah, okay. We'll take the word install it, and perhaps Linnell, security lighting as appropriate, rather than trying to specify a location. I think so, yeah, because it might be that we need lighting in other locations as well, or different locations. Okay, so we've got that there then. Shall we go to the vote? Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Right, now we'll move on to the next items, which are the Resource Communities Infrastructure Fund, and we have two matters here coming forward: social housing funding application, Councillor Duff's proposal, and we have Councillor Shoemaker's proposal in relation to QCN dark fibre through the Nango to Kingaroy. Mr. CEO, are we able to deal with two items as a package so we can do?
Oh, if we're talking about application to the grant program, certainly. We've got Councillor Duff's wording now, so it'll be whether you want to put two applications in. I suppose I'm unfamiliar with the housing one. I can speak quite confidently on the dark fibre, but yeah, in your hands, Mayor. But certainly it would make sense to, if we're putting them into if the consideration is to apply to that program, deal with them together.
Well, this is the beauty of a standing committee, is that we can have conversations without having to formalise it in the first instance. So could I suggest that we give both Councillor Duff and Councillor Shoemaker an opportunity to present their cases, present their what they're proposing, and then we can have a discussion about it and then move to a resolution pursuant to that. Are we happy to do it that way? So can we have those both presented to the committee?
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I understand that we can put a number of applications to the Resources Community Infrastructure Fund. I have put a notice of motion forward, and there is a report on my proposal. I'm unaware of the information in the report here from Councillor Duff. There's not a lot to go on, so I think, and I will have questions in relation to that project. So I actually would like to follow the agenda and actually go through each project on their merit and nominate them for the fund in separate motions myself.
Well, look, that's fine. So that being the case, yours would be next up, Councillor Duff. I believe it's 9.10. So, okay, well, we're happy to deal with it that way. So, Councillor Duff, would you like to now proceed with presenting your proposal to council, and then we can consider motions after that? Thank you.
I'll just give the background. Well, first of all, I'm pretty sure that everyone is aware that we have a huge issue with homelessness in our region. There was only a couple of weeks ago, there was someone in Nanango, and they ended up in a tent in Mergen. They're still in there. They're in our free caravan park, living in a tent, and now there's another one. So there's two. There's people, as I've identified with council previously, living in gullies in Highsville. There's people right across our region. I've been told there's some people living in our amenities blocks in Kingaroy. So the homelessness issue is a big deal. When I saw the guidelines for this, I thought it ticked all of the boxes for regional focus. And I also spoke to Nina Temperton from CTC, and said she has had long discussions with council around this, and that there is land. She's got maps of land that council has that we could utilise as our contribution towards this project. So we would give the land, and CTC would manage the process, like manage would ask for the funding for the units, and CTC would manage the homelessness, putting people into those units. So I've done some costings, but just the background. So the boxes that this would tick, the criteria for the funding is, number one, how well the project demonstrates it will increase access to services that meet the resource community's need, maximise its potential, or enhance the community's well-being. Number two, how well the application clearly demonstrates the project will enhance community safety, reduce social inequality, and benefit disadvantaged communities. Number three, the applicant, its project partners and preferred contractors have the capacity, capability and track record to deliver the community infrastructure project, the readiness of the project to commence construction and how quickly the infrastructure will be delivered, the extent of the project has stakeholder and community support, and the applicant's commitment and financial and or in-kind contribution to the project, and the extent of the required detailed project plan, details of scope, need, benefits, outcomes, adequate financing arrangements and value for money of the project. And as I said, I've spoken with Nina Temperton of CTC about being a project partner. She's actually sent through a letter of support, which I've actually sent through to GM O'May. she's was just about doing star jumps when I suggested this as a potential project. And as I said, the proposal would include a contribution from Council of Residential Land. So the proposal would be that Council submit an application to the Resources Community Infrastructure Fund Round 1 with CTC as a project partner for the construction of 18 low-cost 1- and 2-bedroom units across the townships of Blackbutt, Menango, Kingaroy, Wondai, Mergen and Proston, subject to council land availability, with a contribution at a minimum of 20% being the land value. So our contribution would be the land. So that would be the proposal. So just wanted to flag that one as I think it's an opportunity to do something about what I think is a growing and very, very serious issue across our region. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Duff. Now, are you proposing to put that forward as a motion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Recommendation to Council? Okay. Do we have a seconder to at least get this debated? Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. Okay, well, now the floor is open to debate on this. Speakers for or against? Further questions? Councillor Potter?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm very excited that someone here in council now has actually taken on this board. I've been on the homelessness committee now for a while, and Kathy, I've never even heard of this. This is the first time I've heard of it. So I really seriously am quite, I'm very happy that, as I said, someone's come on board with this, but we are also working out strategies through the local level alliance on the homelessness committee as well, because there's other things, not just the housing issue. There are many other social issues that go with housing as well. So, yeah, I mean, it's great that it's brought, but I would actually like to lay this one on the table, Mr. Mayor, until we find out more information and I actually can look into it a little bit more.
I think, Councillor Potter, the only thing might be, I think the closing date's the 27th of August. So I think we've got about 2 weeks, Mr. CEO, in round one at least, round one. Yep. We might continue. Let's go to the councillors and then, Mr. CEO, I might get you to clarify some of that from the officer's point of view. Yeah. Okay. Councillor Jones?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor. Just a question to Councillor Duff again, just for clarification. You said that CTC would take on the project and all that. So does that mean that CTC, we give the land and then the CTC take on the whole project and continue the maintenance as it was theirs? There would be no ongoing costs to council and all that sort of stuff, because I remember not that far ago we had issues at Mergen and all that sort of stuff with these housing, social housing and all that sort of stuff, and we decided as a council to get back or give it back to the state government because of the ongoing costs to the council, keeping in mind that down the track with the budgets that we're putting out at the moment, and so CTC will take over the running and maintenance and all costs incurred through anything that we deliver or help deliver, sorry.
So we would have to have that conversation, but I'm quite sure from my conversation with Nina that was the intention. However, and the other one that I just wanted to flag was the reason why council pulled out of community housing was because we couldn't manage. It was more about managing the residents, as far as I'm aware. It was about the fact that we just don't do that well. So I just thought the fact that CTC were really keen to take that side of it on was probably the carrot more than anything.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. And that's exactly my point, Councillor. We got out of it. You actually made the comment that we don't do this very well. So I don't think we certainly should be playing the support role as far as I'm concerned, but somebody like CTC needs to lead the way. Happy to support in any way, shape or form, but there's a lot of conversation and a lot more work to go in around this. I'm certainly willing to support and work with whatever we can do to get this up and running. You've highlighted the shortage of people and all that, and I just refer back to my comments earlier during the day when we spoke about unsafe and unhealthy. If we start going down with the policy down there, this is what we could really escalate. So that's my point and my justification in why I'm so concerned about how we put that policy together in regards to that. So fully supportive, but as you've just highlighted, we didn't do it well in the past, and I haven't seen any change to say that the council will be remarkably better. So happy to partner with CTC, but again, being aware of the costs and everything else that'll be needed to maintain these sort of facilities, and you're talking 18, so there will be a substantial cost there eventually. So that's something that I'd just like to get clear before, and like I say, happy to support, but how we get there.
Councillor Potter.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah. So how many units were there, Kathy? So our homelessness issue within the South Burnett is over 100. It won't fix the issue. We will still have homeless people camping in our parks, camping in our rest areas, camping wherever they want, so in toilets. So we've just got to realise that this won't be a fix for our homeless issue. We will still have people camping in places around the South Burnett. But the idea behind this is sound. CTC do this space very well. We all have to agree to that. And they do know other pockets of funding that are around that they can help manage this moving forward. So if our only issue if the only thing that we put forward through is the land in each of the towns, if we have that land available, I possibly don't have an issue with that, depending on where that land is. And if the people who live either side don't have an issue, then I'm okay with this.
Councillor Schumacher.
As I said, as long as people realise this will not solve the issue, there will still be homeless people.
Councillor Schumacher.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I think it's a great opportunity for collaboration and a great opportunity to meet a growing need in our community. So thank you for bringing it forward. My concern is really around there's $8 million worth of funding available for the South Burnett, and I believe there's 2 rounds and we can submit as many projects as we like. I'm probably more interested in the logistics around shovel readiness. So if you've got more information there around how much funding we're actually applying for, who's applying. I've read in the guidelines that not-for-profits and local governments can apply to this fund. So is CTC applying and councils offering their letter of support, or would you be expecting council to write the application? I'm just trying to think through the logistics. And then in terms of shovel readiness, it's my understanding, and I may have read it wrong in the guidelines, but basically within 6 months of signing the funding agreement, we need to be ready to start construction. So I just want to understand, are we actually ready to start construction if we fund it today? Are we ready to put shovels in the ground tomorrow? Do we have house plans, building approvals, those sorts of things? Or are we in a better position to do that work and be ready for the second round? Because I don't want to waste our time and resources. I think this is a fabulous opportunity. And I want to give us the best opportunity to actually get the funding. So there's some of the questions I have that I'd really like. There's no report here, and I haven't seen any letters of approval or anything in the lead up to this meeting. So I'd really appreciate some more detail, Councillor Duff, around the work you've done to shape this up. So appreciate you answering those questions.
Thank you. Yeah, I was proposing 2.7 million was what would be required to. I've done some research on what low-cost housing, and yeah, just more discussions probably need to be had with CTC just to bed down what Councillor Jones's concerns were around the ongoing capital and maintenance. So I wanted to put this forward because I thought it ticked all the boxes. I'm not sure if council is ready for it, when the second round is, or whether we can try and fast track this. I think it'd be great if we can fast track this. And Nina said that there's been a whole heap of work around. Yeah, she's actually got the maps of where the land is, and she said they've done a whole heap of work to progress it. So whether we could work with them and get something shovel ready, and maybe, as has been suggested, they could lead the project. So I don't want to, if there's an opportunity to get it into this round, I'd like to see it happen, but absolutely open for other suggestions from the councillors.
I think 2.7 million is achievable.
I'm mindful of not locking us into a project plan and then, with the increases in construction, I know, you can anticipate up to 20% increase. So if, I want to make sure whatever we apply for will be enough to start and finish the project. I have been working with CTC around regional housing land availability and trying to identify those lots of land across the region. And also with regional housing, who's equally interested in investing in projects like this. So I hadn't really thought about this fund, so I'm glad, you've flagged it. I think it's a great opportunity. However, I am worried that to put a project together of this calibre in 2 weeks will take intensive support. And I'm offline with KTP stuff, and I know many of us are juggling many balls. So I'm just wondering could we actually set this up? And I'm also wondering if, we'd be in a better position to partner with CTC. Like it sounds like we need to bed down a partnership and more work around that maintenance, because 18 units, I managed social housing before for CTC in my previous employment many years ago, and I know firsthand the challenges of managing social housing. It's not easy. So I think there's a lot of conversations to be had there. Fully supportive of the application, absolutely. I think it's a great project. I'd love to see it. I think any new houses in the region is a great start. I'm just not sure, are you confident that you are ready? You can tick all these boxes in the application, and that we could have an application put forward in the next 2 weeks. That's probably what I'm trying to understand. Are you confident we're in a good position to put an application together in the next 2 weeks? Has that work even started?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, from the conversations I've had with Nina, she thinks we can put it together, no problems at all.
Yeah,
Councillor Jones.
yeah, thank you. I heard, did I hear correctly before, Councillor Shoemaker, that you said that there is 2 rounds? Is there 2 rounds?
Yes, there is 2 rounds, Councillor Jones.
Is it possible that I could move a amendment to the recommendation and just leave it exactly as it is and fund round 2? Put it in for round 2 on the proviso. And the reason I asked that, listening to Councillor Duff and all that sort of stuff, give us a little bit more time, get really involved with CTC, get that partnership bedded down and really work for it, and be confident that when we do put that submission into round 2, that we are confident that it's really solid and a standalone project. Would you be happy with that?
I just wasn't sure about the round 2. I'd like to seek clarity from Councillor Shoemaker. Do you know when round 2 is, or is there definitely a round 2? Or?
There is definitely round 2. The guidelines don't indicate when round 2 opens and closes. It's expected that announcements will be made on round 1 in November, and then I imagine the work would need to be started by probably about May 22, 6 months after November. So I'm thinking that probably this time next year, probably June, July, perhaps next year, they'll release round 2. So we're probably looking at about possibly another 10 months away. But that is another option, yeah.
I just, through you, Mr. Mayor, sorry, but I just think for the problems that we're facing, that's too long to wait. I'd like to have the conversation with CTC, and perhaps they could put the application in with our support.
So, Councillor Duff, would you be prepared to consider changing it so that council doesn't submit an application, but that council approaches CTC as to their interest in submitting an application under their banner?
If we're looking at wording, the council supports an application.
Yeah, I like that.
Supports an application.
I think that's better.
Yes, with CTC as the lead partner. Okay, are we comfortable with that as it reads? Any concerns? Let's deal with that. Councillor Potter, what are your
I
thoughts?
was just curious, should we take out round 1 and then make it open, so if they want to apply for this round they can, or if they think they need more time, they can apply for the next round.
Not a bad suggestion, keeps it open. You comfortable with that, Councillor Duff? Did you also want to take out the specifics around the number of units and the land holdings? It might be that they could actually identify more land or less land, or do we want to leave it a bit broader? And because there needs to be a bit of scoping work done here as...
I think we should, Mr Mayor, because is that 18 just in Kingaroy or is that 18 right across the South Bennett? So I think depending on, that would also depend on the size of land. So, and availability of land. So if they don't have the land available, they can't do it in some towns. So I think what your suggestion, Mr Mayor, is correct.
So if we just leave it as Lionel's got, construction of low cost, we don't actually specify the number. We leave that open-ended at this stage. So it's a much broader view. It could be less or more. Thoughts on that as it stands? Okay. I think, Councillor Jones, what if we were to say, as need is determined, in locations of need as determined by CTC across the South Bennett, because they might do a study their work might indicate that you don't need it in certain locations, you need more in others. I think it's a good point you make. Yeah. Just ask everyone, just take a minute to have a look at that and share your thoughts. Councillor Shoemaker?
Yes, Mr Mayor, I've just got the guidelines here. I think we need to do maybe in this recommendation something in relation to the land. It just says that the project must be... sorry, I just lost my spot. In most cases, approved construction projects, eligible organisations that approve for funding will be required to ensure that the resulting project infrastructure continues in operational use as per its intended use at the time of application for a period of time that may be up to 10 years after the project completion. In most cases, it is expected that the applicant will own the land on which the funded infrastructure is to be constructed. If the applicant does not own or have control over the land for purposes of constructing, operating and maintaining the infrastructure, the applicant will be required to enter into formal arrangements with the landowner to guarantee access for these purposes prior to entering a project funding agreement. So I just think in sort of the same kind of sequence as this, we as a council probably need to do some work around entering into those formal arrangements around the land parcels available for a project like this, because that will take some level of community consultation, you know. But that's probably the work that council would need to do for to make this, set this project up for success. So I think bedding down that partnership and then working with CTC to identify the lots of land and then actually those formal arrangements around land, because I'm mindful with council being a local government, there are specific requirements under the Act for land if we're to gift it or repurpose it. CEO Mark, would I be on the right page there?
Yeah, that's the other question, Mark, is if we were going to do this, CTC, we would have to certainly have a formal arrangement in place with CTC prior to them signing a funding agreement. So the funding agreements are expected to come out around November, which means we would have to have a formal arrangement in place before then. Yes, if that, for round one, that is. Round two would be a longer time frame, of course. But Mr. CEO, do we have the capacity, though, legally, or the regulations to gift land to an organisation like CTC?
Certainly we lease, they're not for profit, so the exemption applies to lease. We're going through that work now with another facility the council owns. We've already done the lease on it, and part of the next stage, and that is depending on whether we have to make a and this is a two-way answer, because I'm actually going through this process trying to understand what I need to do. If we were to gift a site to a not-for-profit, do we need to do a ministerial? There's exemptions under the Act, but what's the actual process, and how do we build the business case to not only justify but actually to support the community benefit of doing this, of gifting or moving an asset from council control to a not-for-profit, and then where you would go. That work isn't well, as I said, we're moving into that next phase. I've got a timeline for myself of about 2 to 3 months, so that would run probably in parallel to this, because the exact same rationale and methodology would apply, because whilst they're different, they're the same. So yeah, you probably need every ounce up until November to get it in place. The trick would be, and I'm not sure if we have to, but certainly I think it would be good practice to inform the minister of what our action, or the department of what our actions are. So then it would be if there was any delay. But that's the bit I'm not 100% sure of, Mayor. I'm going through that process now.
So they're all good observations, I think. There's a bit of work to be done here, and I guess the next week or so will determine when it was likely to happen, but it was probably shaping up as around 2, if I could suggest that. Sorry, Councillor Duff. Could be wrong. Well, perhaps, but let's.
As far as the land use agreement, the comment I made to the Mayor before is just actually with CTC, if they're going to partner and do the application, the resourcing to put something like this in. We've seen it with BBRF applications in the time, and that a $2.7 million application is no simple task. And again, it's a tremendous idea. I'm with everyone else. I don't want to sound like I'm speaking against it. It's a tremendous idea, but there would be. We will be 3 managers down in a week, and we've got we'll have to find someone to do the work, literally.
So it would be subject to CTC having the resources and the preparedness to do an application within the next 2 weeks, and then subject to council being in a position to be able to enter into formal arrangements before the funding agreements were sent out for signing. Yeah, if it was successful. Anything further, Councillor Shoemaker? And then we'll go to the vote on this one. I think we'll move on.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Just noting that work has to happen as well. I'm just wondering if there needs to be an amendment to your recommendation, Councillor Duff, that just incorporates like an actual concentrated effort by council to look at those parcels of land and start that work around the land, the ownership or the arrangements, the formal arrangements around land in the lead up to this project, because that won't just happen overnight. There'll be a fair bit of work in that. So hearing what CEO Mark's saying, so I'm actually proposing you add something to your recommendation that enables council to start doing some of that preliminary work so that it comes back, and we can make an informed decision and really give this project its best possible opportunity for funding going forward.
I think that's got merit, councillors, in the fact that the announcements are probably only 3 months away. November's only 3 months away. So we would need to commence this work fairly promptly. If CTC was intending to lodge an application before the 27th of August, we would need to be starting this work promptly. And as Councillor Shoemaker's indicated, I'd support putting some timeframes on the commencement of that work. Yep. Councillor Potter?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, my concern is the staff issue. I mean, we're already short-staffed now, and taking the staff off whatever else they're doing and putting them into this one project, this might have to be something that we outsource or something like that. I don't know, but I just can't see us having enough staff to be able to do this as well with everything else they've got. That's my concern right now.
yes, I think it'll depend too on how much information CTC have got in terms of the land that they've identified previously with council. And then there's the body of work to get the exemptions approved, Mr CEO, to be able to do the gifting through the community consultation, the minister's requirements on that. So, yeah. Councillor Jones?
Yeah, Mr Mayor, so in listening to the last 5 minutes of comments, can we stipulate then that this goes in round 2? Because it obviously requires a considerable amount of time, a lot of work to go into it. And I think rather than have two really good projects going into the same funding application, competing against each other for the same region, I just think if we go in with QCN dark fibre, happy to hear Councillor Shoemaker's comments and all that sort of stuff, but I just, in listening to everything and the hesitation around the commitment of CTC to be able to deliver confidently in the next 2 weeks, and I know Nina is a go-getter and she would certainly do so. Yeah, exactly right. But again, Kathy, she will bend over backwards, but my concern is the work that we have to do through council, and Councillor Duff's already told me, whispered in the ear, that she's identified the blocks of land and all that sort of stuff, but that's got to be agreeable. There's a lot of work. I would like to see this go into round 2 and totally understand where Councillor Duff's coming from. It's an important issue. It's a serious shortage. It's a serious problem, but we have two really good projects on the table. QCN dark fibre, what I read here in the report, is ready to go, and it just gives the social housing issue an extra bit of time. Just putting it out there. I'm not confident. I won't support this on the fact that it's going to go in now. I don't think that we'll have the time and all the availability to get it right. I just would like to see us give a bit more time, and we're only talking 6-8 months, something around that figure. And I know it's an important thing, but that's just where I'm coming from. Yeah.
So, yeah, that being the case, Councillor Duff and Councillor Shoemaker, as the mover and seconder, thoughts on specifying round 2?
Mr Mayor, I wanted to leave it as open just to see what, how much work CTC has already done, because Nina said just talk to, she had people that were right across this. I just, I don't see the point in doing that. If we could just, even if we just left it like that, and then what stops us then, what I can't see the point in actually bedding it down to round 2, given the... Well, no, if CTC put it in, it's a different group putting it in, so we're not actually competing against ourselves. And there's a lot of money available in that bucket. So I'd just like to see us put up both projects.
This is your chance, Councillor Duff, to either put round 2 or to leave it as is, and then it's going to go to the vote. So,
I'm
you're going to have to make a call.
I'm left without any rounds
Okay,
put in.
right. Well, we've got a mover and a seconder as is. So that being the case, I think we'll go to the vote on this one then. Councillor Shoemaker, unless you wanted to make any changes.
Yeah, I just think there needs to be a second point that, that council works with CTC to commence preliminary discussions around available lots of land and the ownership, probably looking for some help here, but the ownership or lease arrangements of those lots. And that work can happen any time, but I'm mindful that for this project to be successful, as it said in the guidelines, and what I'm trying to say is that we actually need to be able to say, this is where we will build them, these are the lots of land, and as the CEO has said, that could involve going to the minister, that could involve, that there needs to be more discussions about that. So I think regardless of whether CTC's, if they're comfortable in applying under this fund for the funding, that decision sits with them if they want to go for round 1 or 2. In my opinion, they're writing the application. But clearly, whatever the outcome is from their perspective, we still have work to do, and I have commenced some of that initial work looking at what land might be available around Kingaroy, but I'm mindful there's, you want to do this across the South Burnett, so, there's another parcel of work that has to happen concurrent to this, regardless of whether they get the funding or not. Because from a regional housing point of view, there are other regional housing funds that could potentially be available, regardless of whether it's for this project or not. So, yeah, I think there's another parcel of work around actual land and ownership and lease arrangements that we need to understand from council's perspective. So I'd probably like to see an addition like that or something like that considered in your recommendation, Councillor Duff.
Councillor Duff, you comfortable with that addition? Yep. Okay. All right. That's good work. Thank you, everybody. Okay. Well, let's get this one up for the vote. Hey, those in favour? Okay. You got that, Linnell? Got those. Getting late in the day. Those against? Councillor Jones and Councillor Froloff. Okay. So the motion has been carried. 5 votes to 2. Let's now, thank you everybody for that conversation. Let's now move on to 10.2, which is notice of motion for the RCIF. Excuse me, Councillor, for QCN dark fibre to the Nango and Kingaroy. Councillor Shoemaker, thank you.
Yes, Mr Mayor. I'd like to move a motion, and there is a report there. We just want to understand from the CEO whether we should actually procedurally deal with the report first and then the motion. Or it doesn't-
Neither nor, Councillor.
doesn't really matter?
The reports for information, it was done, if I just add,
Yep.
there's been, since the KTP and the decision to put the conduit in, and I suppose this is where I was going before, there's been 12 months of work, and we've got government partners that through confidentiality agreement that we aren't to name. We've got the Department of State Development working with us. We've got a whole range of agencies, and to get this application in, there's massive amount of work has gone to bring us to this point, so it's ready to go. And it's, from my previous understanding, I suppose, and I'm going to, is where, and I'll steal Councillor's time, a pipeline of priority projects. And my comment before about Works for Queensland and getting that 3-year program out, and that we've got it's Councillor Duff says a cracker of an idea, it really is, or wherever it came from, Councillor, but I'll give you the credit. But it takes us a little while to wheel these things into some form of shape where they've got some chance of success. Whatever we do with that last one going forward, whether it's this program or another program, once we start to regurgitate the work on it or do the work on it, it'll be ready for whatever the next, and we just get better and better at the applications every go we have until we crack one. But the BBRF and all these sorts of things really, really want us to be, and one of my own internal is that we have 10-year capital works programs for water and sewerage, is getting all these capital projects at least lined up, so that we can service the request of council, or when they go, or if you want to put them in for a grant and use other people's money, terrific idea. And again, 100% support. I'm very conscious that I'm not prosecuting an argument against any of it, but just that we're ready to throw them in, and they do cost a fair bit of money to get them to shovel-ready status. And I know other councils, and we have advocated for it before. It would be terrific to see if any level of government is listening. Assistance to actually get these projects to a shovel-ready state so they can be submitted. That would be a terrific grant program.
I'm just listening to Councillor and Mr CEO. I actually think it would be good if we could actually escalate 10.3. You could give us your report on the QCN dark fibre, and then Councillor Shoemaker can deliver her proposal for the application. Are you both comfortable with that? So
Yeah, I think I'd be much more
give us the
comfortable with
background.
that, just the background, because there's been extensive work done on this project, and I think it would be wonderful if CEO Mark could present that.
Happy to move that we escalate item 10.3 as the next item on the agenda. We have a seconder for that. Councillor Shoemaker, thank you. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Mr. CEO, over to you. 10.3.
Okay, 10.3. So what we've done is the report is, I'll talk really quickly, conscious of time. We've actually been working with a whole range of partners through the ROC, through the Gravel Road report that came through the ROC, through the Department of State Development, through a number of other entities, as I said, that through commercial and confident arrangements I won't go into. But we've got the submarine cable is coming into Caloundra. It's the most newest uncluttered fibre cable into Australia. It hooks into the state government network, the QCN network, and it terminates at Toorong. So what council has done, there is, I'll quote a state government official, there is no guidebook or anything you can copy in this application, because no council in Queensland has actually done where we're going. And we thought when we put the conduit in as part of, with everything with KTP, the majority of the money is under the ground. We can carry up, I think, upwards of anything up to 5 carriers. You've not only got economic capability, but social equity. So data wave over in Wandai, any of those, so they're backhaul. So any of those providers can get into the access. So council will actually end up with 100 gigabyte a second node coming into the CBD. It will then spread out to all the businesses. We can enter arrangements with providers, be it NBN, be it Telstra, be it Optus, be it local providers, as to it will put this region onto the absolute front foot of the digital economy. This I'll get really excited here. This is we are there. We are now. There's some other councils that have put nodes in Bundaberg Regional, and we can learn from them. They didn't put the infrastructure in. They were the benefit of the state running the cable down the coast. The reason they call it dark fibre, as we've been through before, because optic lights up when it's carrying a signal. This thing is dead dark. There's not a signal on it, so it's not cluttered. It doesn't have congestion. It's just new. And when we looked at it, it's a pittance to bring the, well, when I say pittance in the grand scheme of these sorts of projects, but to bring the fibre overhead, it won't be buried to start with from the termination point near Stanwell to Kingaroy. It costs very little more to bring it through Nanango, so it's not just then Kingaroy, it actually starts to expand out. So as we get the cable running through, we can start to plan for bringing a node off into Nanango. We can start to bringing a node off. We can service and backhaul for all the state and federal public agencies that's around the CBD. We've got a range of businesses that can come back to it. But the exciting part is not only the range of businesses that we got now that can access it, the actual attraction to bring companies and the university hub that council's talked about. It's a stone's throw to hook it up to the private hospital. So if we wanted to bring the university hub that the council's talked about, community health centres, this thing, once the next stage is to get that here. We've got last mile going in now. Next stage is to get it here. And then the third stage is commercial exploitation of what we got, as well as building local businesses. So the report's just for information, and that's my pitch. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. The commercial exploitation of that, exploitation, how broad could we go in terms of regionally? I mean, around Kingaroy, or can we actually get it out a little bit further?
Well, in the first instance, it'll be Nanango Kingaroy. It'll follow the cable. Once we get it here, then you can talk about, okay, so how do we get it to the other centres? The most expensive part of the infrastructure is quite often the last mile, because once they get it into a community, they've got to dig everything up to get it to all the businesses. This is the uniqueness of what our council has done. We've actually done the last mile infrastructure before the connectivity has been put in place. The last mile infrastructure could have been a 5 to 10 year window as far as once we got of getting the cable here, the stuff won't go bad. It'll just sit under the ground waiting for the fibre to be run through it. From go to woe, from inception of when we dug the first hole in KTP to actually having 100 gig into the, and particularly with the November timelines and things like that, it's not inconceivable that we'll have 100 gig a second within 3 years of the first sod being turned in KTP. That is just stunning for a council and very much brag rights.
Thank you very much, Mr. CEO. Any questions for Mark?
Thank you for the explanation and the justification for the extra spend on the KTP, Mr. CEO. Thank you.
I think you're off topic, Councillor Jones. Okay. Any further questions? I'll just move that the report be received for information. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Shoemaker, thank you. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you, Mr. CEO. Okay, 10.2, Councillor Shoemaker, thank you.
So share CEO Mark's excitement and everyone in the council chamber's excitement. This is cutting edge project, and it's wonderful that we can connect Nanango and Kingaroy to this project. I think just fabulous. So I'd like to move a motion that South Burnett Regional Council submit an application to the Resources Community Infrastructure Fund Round 1 for the new high-speed fibre optic infrastructure connection to Kingaroy via Nanango, leveraging the state government's fibre optic network at the Tron Power Station. Council recognises that this infrastructure project is costed at, can I amend that to 3 million? Just in the report it said 2.5 to 3, so I'll just put 3 in there just to cover our bases, and is shovel ready with both build and infrastructure management partner relationships in place. Council recognises that this project will close the existing digital divide and elevate the South Burnett to a position of leadership in regional Australia, provide high-level capacity to resolve the current network congestion experienced by businesses and the community through offering new black haul routing capability for NBN, Telstra and other networks, put downward pressure on high regional data costs, establish the interconnect POP in the Kingaroy Transformation Project Zone, and will leverage Council's current investment in the last mile digital conduit in the project footprint. Enable further smart country elements to be achieved in the delivery of the KTP project at no additional cost to Council. Provide future capability and project preparedness for similar digital trunk infrastructure works to be delivered in Nanango, supporting further growth and investment readiness outcomes to be achieved in the region. Support improved livability and lifestyle outcomes with improvements in community safety, community services and general social connectivity. Enable new cutting-edge digital services offering up to 100 gigabytes per second to support and attract leading edge in ag tech, health and business, Internet of Things adoption, and create a new opportunity to microwave very high capability and secure further funding opportunities to support other townships, outlying businesses and key facilities to access improved digital capacity throughout the region. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's with great pleasure I commend this recommendation to Council.
Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Jones. Okay. Speakers? Other speakers at this stage? Okay, no speakers. Look, I'd like to say a couple of things here. First of all, acknowledge Councillor Shoemaker for the work that you've done in relation to this, and thank you on behalf of Council for doing so. Thank you, Mr. CEO, for the work that you've done for some time in putting our council at the forefront of this leading technology in not only regional Queensland, but Queensland more broadly, and also showing our Wide Bay partners how it's done, I might say, including Bundaberg. Can I also say that, I think this also is going to open up scope for what the future of the CBD of Kingaroy could look like. It may well be that in the future, and I know Councillor Shoemaker, I'm only preaching to the converted here, it may be that in the future, the Kingaroy CBD isn't such a retail centre. It could well be that it's more of a professional centre. And you've seen this in places like Nambour, where now Nambour's main street's a professional centre, with professional offices up and down the street, coffee shops, food outlets, and that sort of thing. So, KTP lends itself to that. And of course, this would obviously fuel that. It would actually enable that to happen into the future. So it would be great to see companies moving their operations, their regional head office operations to Kingaroy, rather than being on the coast of Brisbane. I think that would be tremendous. So that's all I've got to say. I think it's absolutely wonderful. Thank you, everyone involved. Did anyone else want to add anything to that? Councillor Potter?
Yeah, I just want to say that apart from businesses, this actually opens up our area for gaming hubs, because there's a lot of gamers out there in the South Burnett, and this would actually enable companies to come in here and actually set up gaming hubs. And yeah, it would sort of almost put us on the map as one of the IT people. Yeah.
And gaming hubs are becoming a big part of the economy in the more populated centres. Absolutely, they're growing rapidly. Councillor Jones.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Mayor. It's with great pleasure that I sit and listen to the comments that have just been made around this chamber this afternoon in regards to the QCN dark fibre. It's been a long, hard fight, and we've had a lot of conversation and serious debate over it. And to hear the justification and the acknowledgement that what this QCN fibre and the extra spend on that on the KTP will enable us to do, it can reach right across our region. And I've always said that this is a regional development, not only in Kingaroy but for the whole of the South Bernard, and has the potential to do that with this QCN dark fibre. So I'm just expressing my glee this afternoon, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Anyone else before we wrap? Councillor Shoemaker, just a right of reply to wrap up. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to acknowledge, and I think it's only fair, and I know you have done, CEO Mark, for all of your work and your passion. When I first walked in and sat in your office and you talked to me about this submarine cable, I went, oh my gosh, what? I can certainly see your vision and the journey that we've been on to get here. I'd also like to acknowledge GM Meehan and his team, and Gary Cooper from the Department of State Development, who has just been a hero on this project and is flying the flag for us. So really, it's with crossed fingers and toes that may we be successful in this funding. Really am hopeful for our region. I think this will be a great opportunity for Nanango, Kingaroy and the entire South Burnett. So just like to thank and acknowledge the amount of work that's gone into brokering these partnerships and these discussions. It's been an enormous project and I look forward with great anticipation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. Okay, well, let's go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all, and we wish you all the best of luck. Fingers crossed that we get this across the line. Okay.
Just,
now,
Mayor, just as an absolute before we move into close, the Esports Olympics. So at they don't show it on Channel 7, but at the Rio and I believe Tokyo Olympics, the Esport Olympics have been demoed at both of those games. The next Esport Olympics are in Asia in 2022. It's a massive, massive growth industry. Kingaroy for the Esport Olympics, yeah.
Yes, who would have thought? Hey, esport, but it's a growing business. It's growing. It's a big thing. Okay. I now move that Council considers the confidential reports listed below on a meeting closed to the public in accordance with Section 254J of the Local Government Regulation 2012 11.1 Wandering Cattle, Proston Abbey Wood Road. The matter is considered to be confidential under Section 254J-F of the Local Government Regulation, and the Council is satisfied that discussion on this matter in an open meeting would, on balance, be contrary to the public interest, as it deals with matters that may directly affect the health and safety of an individual or a group of individuals. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Jones. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. We'll now move into confidential. Okay, I'll now move that Council moves out of closed council into open council. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Shoemaker. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. We have the officer's recommendation into item 11.1. Council issue correspondence to the owner of the property and follow up other actions as discussed. Do we have a mover? Councillor Shoemaker. Seconder, Councillor Henson. Thank you. Speakers for or against? Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Now call the meeting to close at 5:52 p.m. Thank you all. Have a lovely evening.